In the realm of the ordinary, our hero Zhuangzi, who found solace in the extraordinary world of coding and game design. As a lone warrior, he single-handedly poured his heart into crafting a virtual universe. Amid the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of his keyboard, he reclined in his chair, tired yet hopeful. His dreams whispered of the fortune his toil would soon bring. His daydreaming was abruptly shattered by the trilling ring of his phone. Mattoon Chun. As he picked up, her voice came through sharp as a blade demanding the overdue rent. Zhuangzi pleaded for a little more time, confident in the success his upcoming game would bring. Ma, however, was skeptical. She reminded him of the less-than-stellar sales of his previous games with only a handful of buyers. He responded, a tinge of sadness coloring his words, attributing it to the lack of good taste in his audience. Unimpressed, Ma fired back, implying his own taste was the one lacking. She left him with an ultimatum: pay up by the next day or face eviction. Checking his bounds, a pitiful 558 RMB stared back at him. Frustration gnawed at him, but he knew that persistence was his only weapon. Fingers posed over the keyboard, he resolved to finish his game post-haste. His determination, however, was short-lived as his computer flickered off, replaced with a flurry of cryptic numbers and a series of instructions for designing monstrous figures and rectifying coding errors. As Zhuangzi, who tried to grapple with this bewildering reality, a warning of a system overload flashed, followed by a disheartening sight. His computer case crashed down, billowing smoke. Just when he thought he'd hit rock bottom, a radiant light held his attention. A new world was being released with Earth as its platform. As the progress bar filled from 15% to 30% to 100%, his computer exploded with brilliant lights. He shielded his eyes from the glare, and then his world began to shake. An earthquake. He bolted out of the building to safety, only to be met with a surreal sight. Trees bursting through concrete, scaling buildings. Dazed Chuang, we wondered if this was all a bizarre dream. The trees bore a striking resemblance to his own creations. The throng around him erupted into chaos, struggling to comprehend this new reality. Above the pandemonium, cries drew attention to a monstrous apparition in the sky, crashing into a helicopter. The resulting explosion sent debris raining down, and amidst the terrified fleeing crowd, a little girl was knocked down. As she looked up, terror filled her eyes. A beast bloomed over her. Zhuangzi froze in disbelief as he recognized the creature. His creation, a hippogriff, a formidable fusion of eagle and horse with unyielding steel feathers. Its formidable power was as vast as the sea, and it boasted an unnerving ability to ripple scream. Zhuangzi was left grappling with the reality of his virtual creations breathing life into his own woe. In the heart of turmoil, a hippogriff reared up, unleashing a fury-filled shriek at the terrified crowd. Recognizing the danger, our hero rushed towards it, his eyes locked on a tiny girl, frozen in terror as the monstrous creature turned its gaze towards her. With heart pounding in his chest, he swept her into his arms and dashed away, the beast's chilling ripples scream echoing in the air. Shielding the child's ears, he felt the pain of the hippogriff scream pierce through him. Suddenly, the earth convulsed beneath them. The monster halted abruptly, sensing another formidable presence. Behind it, a pair of fiery eyes blazed in the darkness. Another beast was charging towards it. Before the hippogriff could react, it was struck down. Our hero watched in shock as the unicorn Volve, a terror of the prairie, emerged victoriously. Its horn glistening with an otherworldly glow, was renowned for its power. With a danger rating of level B and the ability to call upon lightning, this beast was no less daunting. As the scene unfolded before him, our protagonist felt his consciousness fade, and he slumped to the ground, relieved he may escape the burden of his rent. Awoken by the shrill beeping of hospital machines, he found himself in a sterile white room. The girl he had saved was there. Dazed, he questioned the reality of the harrowing events. Fumbling for the remote, he turned on the TV, desperate for answers. The news reporter Liza Meng announced a surreal phenomenon: trees towering at a staggering 5,000 meters, dwarfing them as they were waist-high. Suddenly, an unseen entity attacked, causing the broadcast to abruptly cut off. In the subsequent news, a team of professionals had delved 1,000 meters into a mysterious giant pit. As the camera panned across, the crimson glare of an all-too-familiar set of eyes appeared, followed by another abrupt cutoff. The next broadcast pleaded for players to identify themselves at the designated lobby in risk. Bonds to this human crisis, confusion swept over him. Why would they need players? The previous events, uncannily similar to his game design, flashed in his mind. hippogriff, unicorn valve, the sky trees, and the abyssal pit, all elements of his fantasy world. As if on cue, an interface appeared before him. It displayed his name, Duan Wu, his level 1 status, and his profession as an NPC game designer. His current stats were displayed: title absent, health points at 100, 0 magic points, 9 for strength, 11 for agility, 12 for intelligence, 9 for perception, with no points remaining for distribution. The average human held 10 attribute points. Was it possible his game had become intertwined with reality? He clicked on his inventory, only to be met with a note stating NPCs like him couldn't access the storage panel and skill panel. Further attempts were met with similar notices, leaving him without access to the change profession system. His reality was becoming eerily reminiscent of his game. Burdened by the humble label of a peasant, he grappled with an identity crisis in his dual life as a game designer. Suddenly, the door burst open, causing him to jolt back into his bed. The intruder was none other than his feisty landlord, Mushroom Cone. Seeing the TV still on, she sharply pointed out his foe's sickness. His surprise obvious, he asked Ame the reason for her unexpected visit. She retorted with dry humor, expressing her reluctance and blaming it on the hospital's notice. Fluster, Wukoli suggested moss-carrying nature, only for her to sharply remind him that his demise would cause her a rent deficit. As their conversation unfolded, a little girl woke up, her gaze flitting between them, trying to decipher who was. Suddenly she sprang up, wrapping her tiny arms around him in a joyful embrace, and addressed him as Dad. A bewildered Ma demanded an explanation, mistaking the girl as his offspring. After a thorough explanation, Ma offered a plausible reason for the girl's behavior: a loss of memory. She proposed to help register the child as lost, and, until her parents could claim her, was to provide her care. Wu, sensing an opportunity, tactfully asked Mom to reduce his rent. In response, Ma roughly handed him a receipt for 8,000 RMB, representing his outstanding medical fee, leaving him aghast at the staggering amount. Life had spiraled into chaos, and humanity, in desperation, waged a war against the Sky Tree and the Abyssal Pit using nuclear bombs. But instead of victory, they lost their dominion over the sky and conceded half of their territory. Now, the salvation of mankind hinged on the gamers. Half a year later, we found himself in his house watching the little girl, whom he had affectionately named Manhwa, struggling to lift a shield. He gently tells hold her hair, praising her effort, who had been utilizing the online world to seek her parents under the name Manhwa. His plea was met with false claims, some offering adoption, others pretending to be her kin. One individual even announced the supposed demise of her parents in an accident, remaining firm who demanded the man reveal Meng's true name. The stranger deflected the question, mentioning the successful capture of a child kidnapping gang in their city due to drugs report. Yet, even after 6 months, Meng's parents remained missing, and her fragmented memory was yet to fully return. Meng, blessed with an innocent heart and diligent spirit, often assisted with household tasks. Although her clumsiness often led to broken items and widespread chaos, her accidental damages brought about quite a stir, leading to charges that we had to pay: a 1,000 RMB repair fee for the television and a hefty 3,000 RMB for house repairs. Who had once contemplated sending Meng to an orphanage, but the mere sight of her teary eyes pleadingly calling him Dad swayed his heart. From then on, their home became a sanctuary filled with comfort and understanding. In the realm of their new fantasy world, to prime territories of monsters reigned, the treacherous underground, teeming with formidable beasts, and the wilderness, Meng to creatures of lesser, albeit significant might. One day, Wu found himself on the edge of a sprawling prairie near a city. Setting down his trusty shovel, he began to dig relentlessly, unearthing the camouflaged monster beneath. As the beast lunged ferociously, Wu defended himself with his shield and retaliated, his shovel snapping the monster's horn. In a decisive strike, a victorious notification materialized announcing the defeat of a jackalope. However, as an NPC who couldn't accumulate experience points, a message emerged after his victory, signaling the completion of the jackalope hunt mission and the achievement of a new title, Bunny Slayer, earned by defeating over 10,000 horned jackalopes. Bone Tire, Wu collapsed on the earth, relieved and exhausted. Being a game designer who had woven intricate plots not only for players, but also for NPCs, the Bunny Slayer title, in fact, was a narrative thread designed especially for an NPC. In the grand tapestry of the story, An ordinary NPC would gain recognition as the hero of the new fantasy world after defeating over 10,000 jackalopes. This NPC would then join the players in an epic quest to defeat the Demon King. Wu found the NPC on the prairie half a year ago, and despite his relentless efforts to dissuade him from hunting jackalopes, the NPC soldiered on. Wu's taunts and warnings fell on deaf ears as the NPC persevered. Wu resorted to laying traps using jackalopes as bait, and even leading a fang boar to the prairie. The boar attacked the NPC, who was flung aside, disappearing from the prairie. As a result, the narrative teetered on the verge of a dramatic shift, the changing of the world's hero. Subsequently, the bustling city players' lobby attracted adventurers of all levels, who marched in holding a lifeless bunny, a sight that left the crowd speechless as he navigated through the thronged whispers about his title. The jackalope slayer echoed, peppered with criticisms about his apparent cowardice for hunting only the lowest level creatures. As a game designer, not a player, who shrugged off their critique, his steps unwavering as he headed to Lao Zhang's spicy rabbit head shop. Lao Zhang, the proprietor, had built his reputation around a unique delicacy, spicy rabbit head. This singular dish had the power to enhance a gamer's speed by a solid 5% for an entire 5 minutes. When Lao received the much-desired jackalope, he didn't celebrate. Business had been slow lately, and so he opted to offer a plate of rabbit heads instead. A choice gratefully accepted from a shadowy corner and unnoticed observer watched. An NPC named Lekuya. To Wu's surprise, she revealed herself, making him thrilled at the arrival of such a pivotal character. As the game's creator, he knew Kuya wasn't just an NPC, she was one of the game's scarce deities. According to the narrative, after exterminating 10,000 jackalopes, Lekuya should recognize him as a determined and resilient player deserving of her blessing to transform him into a hero. Who appealed to the Kuya, begging her to grant her divine favor. Her response, however, was far from expected. She challenged his massacre of the rabbit's creatures she deemed adorable, bewildering Wu with this sudden twist in the storyline. Lakota's anger boiled over. She denounced him as a bunny killer. She yanked his hand, chiding him for his genocide of the sweet creatures, before hurling him to the ground. A furious venting of her rage followed, with her boots repeatedly connecting with his form. Even Lao, the usually assertive spicy rabbit head shopkeeper, was too petrified to interfere. Another player caught sight of the uproar, recognizing the irate deity, and began to speculate whether Wu had offended or harassed her in some way. Wu under attack. Was that a loss? Wasn't he meant to be the hero? Had the game shifted in some unanticipated way? As if on cue, a notification surfaced, revealing the curse Lekuya had placed on him for his jackalope carnage. Now he found himself outcast by the world, his humanity stripped away, metamorphosed into a demon. A glance at his character panel displayed the shift race demon. His current HP read 35 out of 200. NT was maxed at 100. His strength was at 13. Agility was 15. Stamina was 14. Intelligence was 12. Accuracy was 13, and 0 points remained for distribution. Shocked yet intrigued, Wu contemplated the possibilities. The starting attributes of a demon were superior to those of a hero. Perhaps, he mused, this unexpected curse might have its advantages. With most eyes, who declared his love for Kuya, only to be harshly rebuffed, labeled as trash. As he managed to raise his eyes, he spied something that should have remained unsaid. And Kaya's foot connected with his form again, reducing his health to 30. Upon regaining his composure, we discovered that his demon status opened new hitherto inaccessible functionalities. These would ease gameplay and lighten his load during hunts. As he browsed the skill list, he noticed his newfound power, Demon Imitation at level 1. A single skill within his grasp now possessed the terrifying power to freeze lesser demons in their tracks. However, it was tempered by a 60-minute cooldown and a steep cost of 20 magic points. His second ability, Demon Transformation at level 1, allowed him to metamorphose into a formidable demon form. This transformation significantly amplified all his attributes, but it was a fleeting moment of power lasting only 30 seconds. It was further restrained by a 24-hour cooldown period and a whopping cost of 80 magic points. The inherent traits of his newfound race provided him with astounding agility, fortified defense, proficiency and dual-wielding weapons, and impressive night vision. A system notification unveiled a peculiar fact: demons were not allowed to switch professions at the player lobby. Upon achieving level 10, he would be presented with a mission to change his profession. Additionally, his transformation into a rare race would be publicly broadcasted. He was given that. Wu didn't hesitate to hit yes, and immediately a congratulatory message was sent out to the inhabitants of S City, celebrating an anonymous player who was cursed by a goddess and had secured a rare race identity, thereby unveiling a hidden storyline. This unprecedented announcement sent shockwaves throughout the player community. Others coveted the curse of the goddess and were ready to extend their felicitations to the unnamed player, oblivious to the fact that the person in question was Wu, who was near at hand. Some even contemplated pledging their loyalty to the goddess, a reaction that brought a smirk to Wu's face. Meanwhile, in the stately offices of the Player Management Association, the President Lescu was informed about the new race. Inquisitively, he asked his secretary if any significant events had recently transpired in their city. In response, the secretary reported that the city's Thunder Dragon Guild had recently triumphed over a B-rank underground dungeon, assuring President Lescu that there was no divine intervention. She also confirmed that 2 other prominent guilds had not recently embarked on any dungeon quests. Upon being asked about any unusual incidents in the player lobby, she recalled a certain player notorious for hunting jackalopes, who had recently suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of an NPC. Upon learning that this player was Duan Wu, the secretary was taken aback. The president revealed his acquaintance with Wu's father and tasked her with locating Wu, suggesting that the notoriously dungeon-shy player might be a valuable addition to their backup team. Being young confirmed her understanding and carried out the orders. Later on, at the edge of the prairie, Wu found himself armed with 2 shovels and facing down a jackalope hidden in the ground. Without warning, the creature sprang from its lair and charged towards him. Swiftly, he brought down his shovel in a deadly arc, pinning the creature to the earth. The system rewarded him with 10 experience points for his victory over the jackalope, standing victorious and now level 1 with a 10th of the experience required to level up. Wu couldn't help but feel a surge of accomplishment. Previous encounters with jackalope swarms had always ended in retreat, but his new demon form had invigorated him, instilling him with the confidence to stand his ground. With his augmented abilities, the jackalope's attempts to attack appeared pitifully slow. As one leapt towards him, he easily parried the attack, a triumphant smirk on his face as he informed the creature that its speed was no match for his own. Every move was clear to him, as if foretold in a prophecy. He seized the jackalope by its ears, a sinister grin unfurling across his face as it crumbled under his grip. And alert pinged in his field of vision, announcing his ascent to level 2. His eyes hardened as they fell upon the vanquished beast, remembering his innate racial abilities. Without missing a beat, he activated his demon intimidation skill, sending shockwaves of terror through the remaining jackalopes, causing them to faint on the spot. He dispatched the incapacitated jackalopes with ease, their bodies disappearing into his growing inventory. His levels climbed steadily over the ensuing days, the jackalope hunting proving fruitful until he reached level 6. But with each level gained, the experience points provided by these minor monsters dwindled. We surmised that it was time to graduate from hunting jackalopes, seeking prey that offered higher rewards. In this world, leveling up only provided 1 attribute point for distribution per level. Warriors usually favored strength, assassins sought accuracy, and magicians pursued intelligence. Wu found himself at a crossroads, unsure which attribute to invest in. His contemplation was cut short, as a towering creature in the horizon caught his attention. His heart skipped a beat. It was the king of jackalopes, a formidable level 10 beast with a steel heart horn known to wreak havoc on the prairie. It was a monstrosity of Wu's own creation, the first boss he had ever designed in this fantasy realm, tailored for the unseasoned player. Its high HP, tough height, and lightning-fast speed made it the stuff of nightmares for any rookie. The traditional strategy would have been a long-range assault, but Wu grimaced, regretting his initial design, as his only weapon was a meager shovel. Choosing agility, Wu allocated his 6 unspent attribute points, bolstering it to 21. As a demon player, his physical prowess was beyond any average newbie. Pride swelled within him, and he decided to take on the Jackalope King. However, he quickly feigned retreat, mockingly referring to the jackalopes as simple-minded rabbits. Angered by his taunts, the Jackalope King let out a thunderous bellow. Wu retorted, reminding it of the odds stacked against it. The jackalopes charged out from their burrows, led by the enraged king, who was ready to impale Wu. With its bouncing crash attack, Wu with his heightened agility managed to evade the attack and a subsequent one. Wu's provocations continued as he danced around the king's following strikes, challenging it to land a hit. In its rage, the king rallied the jackalopes, ordering a full-scale assault. The clamor of their approach forced Wu to pause and turn around, only to be greeted by a stampede of jackalopes led by the furious king, setting his heart racing. He quickly alerted his fellow players of the jackalope king's presence and urged them to retreat. To his surprise, instead of running, they saw an opportunity for rare loot drops. They promised to Wu up, but ended up being chased by the relentless jackalopes themselves. Amidst the ensuing chaos and curses thrown his way, Wu couldn't help but flash a mischievous grin. With a gracious goodbye, he swiftly excused himself to prepare his daughter's meal, leaving his stunned adversaries vowing retribution for their present plight. Not long after, within the secure confines of Moss Building, he returned home. His arrival was greeted by the delighted squeal of his darling daughter Meng, who flung herself into his open arms. His eyes twinkling, he inquired about her day, and Meng chirped about a picture book gifted by the landlady. This was their life after John Wu had adopted Mon. Their kindly landlady Ma Shan was a frequent visitor, lending her assistance and caring for Mon. She also firmly cautioned Wu against any misconduct toward the child. As the father and daughter exchanged warm smiles, hunger gnawed at their bellies. Wu promised to cook dinner, his culinary skills having evolved since his unexpected foray into parenthood, producing an array of fried rice variations, egg-dried radish, ham, tomato and beyond. Regrettably, upon swinging open the pantry and scanning the refrigerator, both spaces mocked him with their emptiness. A stark realization dawned: they were devoid of food, meaning watching her father's crestfallen expression. tugged at Wu Yu's shirt, insisting she wasn't hungry with a spirited smile. Observing her, Wu's heart twinned with guilt. Her diet for the past half a year had been nothing but the barest of meals, mustard with rice, white sugar porridge, and a shared single loaf of bread. Wu apologized to Mon, his heart heavy with the understanding that her life had been far from comfortable since he had become her guardian. Tentatively, he suggested fried chicken for dinner, to which Meng initially responded with glee, but her joke quickly ebbed away, reminding Wu that if they splurged too much, the rent would remain unpaid. Wu accepted the uncomfortable truth of his overdue rent, maintenance and medical bills, but he comforted Meng, assuring her that they could afford a luxurious meal this once despite his meager balance of just 121 RMB. He pledged to her that their days of destitution were numbered. Brimming with optimism, he ordered a lavish chicken meal costing 120 RMB. He realized in the post-apocalyptic world the revere and envied players, with their extraordinary physical prowess, or inexplicable healing skills, and most importantly, their wealth had become idols. The key to such prosperity, the power of player identity and the treasures discovered in dungeons. Wu was aware that unlike their wild counterparts, the monsters lurking underground relinquished precious monster crystals upon defeat. Depending on their grade, E, D, or C, these crystals could be traded for substantial sums up to 2,000 RMB for a C-grade crystal. Thus, he dared to dream of becoming a player, believing it could lead to riches. Soon after, a knock on the door announced the arrival of their sumptuous arch-family meal set. With ravenous hunger and tears of gratitude, Wu and Mun devoured their feast. As darkness unfolded, he gently settled a slumbering Mun into bed, definitely drawing a comforting blanket over her. Her sleepy murmurings about the delight of French fries brought a smile to his face. Retreating to his digital sanctuary, he scoured the chat forums, eyes widening as they landed on news about a peculiar event that had transpired at 4 p.m. earlier that day. The Jackalope King, a figure of lore and legend, had apparently descended upon the city's outskirts, leading to an unusual surge of rabbits. The players caught off guard fell prey to the fluffy onslaught, for found themselves in the hospital battling injuries. Relief washed over him as he read on. His companions had been spared, saved just in time. He shuddered at the thought of the guilt that would have gnawed at him had the outcome been different. Most of the trending posts on the forum were his own. Ever since the calamity, he dedicated himself to helping others through sharing vital information. In the eyes of the players, who was no less than a divine being. However, even divinity stumbled, sometimes evident from the unfortunate incident where a 50-member expedition into a dungeon resulted in a grim tally of just 2 survivors. The tale of the overconfident leader who failed to adapt despite the guy echoed the fact that Wu's infallibility was not absolute. Despite the backlash and doubts, he acknowledged it as his most catastrophic guiding failure. This incident inadvertently spurred the development of more complex dungeons and formidable bosses. Who knew this was all part of the game's evolution? Additional content and system updates. Their world was unforgiving. 99 victories could be overshadowed by a single failure. With this humbling realization, he decided to retreat from uploading guides. The next morning saw him at the outskirts of a city, a sweeping prairie unfurling before him. Money was scarce, but he was determined to change that. His resolve was firm. He could endure skipping a meal, but he wouldn't allow Mom to experience the same hardship. Glancing at the boards nearby, he was reminded of his present status at level 6 and the urgency to hit level 10 by day's end. He decided to undertake the profession-changing mission, venturing into the dungeon depths to gather monster crystals. Though the Manhwas were notoriously aggressive and unyielding, they were his target. The lack of crystal rewards made them unappealing to other players, but he had a secret ace up his sleeve. He knew that slaying 100 fangboars would unexpectedly double a player's experience points, despite the usual rule of diminishing returns from hunting the same monster. With this plan, he struck down a level 3 fangboar cub with his trusty shovel. Knowing that his progression hinged on this hunt, he was invigorated when the notification of his successful kill and earned experience points popped up. Fueled by this victory, he carried on his relentless hunt steadfast in his quest to level up. His heart swelled with a quiet satisfaction as he surveyed the failed boars. Yet that triumph was abruptly shattered when he spied a massive colossal enraged boars looming ominously behind him. Regretful apologies spilling from his lips as he took to his heels. He found the beast relentlessly hot on his trail. Abruptly, a notification flashed signaling the reset of his demon imitation skill. He skidded to a halt and swiveled a defiant spark in his eyes as he faced the boars. "My turn now," he declared, his voice steely. Activating his demon imitation skill, he lunged, and the boars fell back in terror. Swift and ruthless, he vanquished them one by one with his trusty shovel. Each kill awarded him 50 experience points, hastening his ascension to level 10 and initiating the profession-changing quest. Accessing the game's interface, relief washed over him as he confirmed he had indeed hit level 10. The task had taken him longer than anticipated, but time remained on his side. His quest, as a newly minted demon race, was to conquer the Demon Vault dungeon situated to the north of the Sky Tree within the hour. In this magical realm, two kinds of dungeons existed, underground and fixed. The former were defined by their set locations and physical entrances, housing monsters that were safely contained. After a victorious clearing, these dungeons would reset, waiting for the next group of adventurers. The latter were unpredictable spatial rifts appearing in cityscapes or wilderness, teeming with monsters that could breach into the human world if not promptly dealt with. Once cleared, they disappeared, their tasks completed. The mission at hand seemed exceedingly challenging, and he couldn't help but suspect the system was working against him. After the fallout of a nuclear attack on the Sky Tree, a formidable defense shield had materialized around it, obstructing all forms of modern technology. Any vehicle that dared to approach would burst into flames. A flying jet would suddenly stall, and all signals remained blocked. In this world devoid of conventional transportation, horse-drawn carriages ruled the roads generously provided by the Management Association. As he journeyed, he marveled at the untouched prairie surrounding the Sky Tree, a testament to nature's resilience in the absence of human disturbance. When he finally arrived at the Demon Vault dungeon, a wave of exhilaration surged through him. As was customary in such RPGs, some players specialized in aiding others in their missions in exchange for currency. These carried to teams as they were gnome lord players with the promise of rare crystals and superior gear. He weighed his options, keenly aware of the ticking clock. A random player suggested joining their team, offering him a slot. The cost, however, set at 20,000 RMB per trip, staggered him, despite the 6 for 5 deal. Politely declining, his gaze fell upon a group he had encountered earlier. The characters appeared to have gained strength, their gear glinting with a newfound superiority. Suddenly, Cheng Chen, a formidable level 19, approached, causing our hero to fumble in a hurried attempt to open his inventory. The pressing need to remain anonymous was clear. Cheng Chen proposed an alliance. Speaking of a team that only lacked one more player, he invited our hero to fill that vacant. Pulling on a mask, the protagonist remained discreet, explaining that he was a miner by trade, dedicated to unearthing monster crystals from dungeon depths, not a warrior by any means. Kun Qian, undeterred by this revelation, insisted that the role was not a deal-breaker, extending the invitation once again. In terms of loot distribution, the court team would split the equipment among themselves, but the spoils of the crystals would be shared equally with our masked hero. Reassured by his unrecognized identity, the protagonist weighed the team's skill level and gear against that of known rival groups. Finding them comparable, he decided the alliance was advantageous and agreed to Tension's offer. Together they flung open the ominous dungeon gate. Stepping into the overwhelming darkness, the Sky Tree's interference made technology useless here. Torches became their beacon in the pitch black, held high as they delved deeper into the dungeon's underbelly. With the activation of his demon eyes, our hero became their guide in the darkness. They marveled at the radiant crystals embedded within the dungeon walls and floor. KCO John, the level 18 enthusiast, was keen to start collecting but was cautioned by Chun. Just then, a beastly silhouette emerged from the shadows, its red eyes glinting with a menacing hostility. A level 12 armored demon wolf. The group was instructed by Chun to brace for battle, with his actions drawing the wolves' attention. An arrow whizzed past, striking one of the wolves that had lunged at them, leaving it vulnerable for Chun's swift decapitation. Another pounce was swiftly nullified by Kui Gen Z's timely magic, protecting Chun from the imminent danger. With the demon wolves taken care of, Chun advised a brief rest to recuperate, and warned Wu of the escalating dangers ahead, suggesting he stood back and focus on mining. As the rest of the team ventured further into the darkness, our hero was left alone, contemplating the team's capability. Even with their impressive gear, clearing the demon wolf dungeon seemed an improbable feat. However, within an hour, he began digging diligently, aware that the dungeon boss lurked just beneath him close to the entrance. As his shovel pierced the underground, he prepared to descend using a rope. However, the moment his boots touched the ground, he was met with a chilling greeting of Wolf. Looking up, the sight that met his eyes left him in a state of stunned disbelief. A furious Wolf lunged, its deadly intent honed on him. With a swift sidestep, he evaded the onslaught. Yet the beast's razor-sharp claws grazed him, causing a 10-point reduction in his health. As the wolf crashed clumsily onto the earth, he seized this fleeting opportunity. Swiftly, he rifled through his inventory, pulling out the deceased jackalope. The sudden sight of the dead bunny instantly transformed the feral wolf into a docile pup. Aware of the dungeon-dwelling armored demon wolves' dire diets and their compelling attraction to jackalopes, he tossed the lifeless creature to the awestruck wolf. Seizing this rare moment of distraction, he plunged his blade repeatedly into the wolf's underbelly, its known weak point. A pop-up alert appeared, notifying him of his success. He'd slain the armored demon wolf, earning himself 100 experience points. The plentiful experience points and the prospect of obtaining a crystal invigorated him, sparking his determination to level up, but his victory was short-lived. The sound of rustling and low growls echoed from behind, and he spun around to witness a surging tide of wolves advancing towards him. Realizing too late that the center of the jackalope was a wolf magnet, he sprang towards a hanging rope. His swift ascent, leaving the enraged pack behind. Perched atop, he taunted the wolves, declaring their inability to follow him. But the pack had already diverted their attention. They then circled Tension's group, causing his heart to twinge with remorse, but he was reassured by their previous survival against the Jackalope King. Taking aim, his arrow found its mark in a wolf's eye. He sought answers from Chun about the inexplicable wolf onslaught, but a sudden cry got him off. An injured wolf had lunged at Xiao Zhang, sinking its teeth into his arm. Noticing the erratic behavior, he wondered what had incited such fury in the normally passive wolves. While Chun deflected the attacking wolf with his sword, he barked orders urging his team to stay alert. He directed Jin Yun Kong to tend to Ziyun's wounds, and commanded Kiza inside to bombard the surrounding wolves with explosive fireballs. Yun Kong mused if a curse was upon them. Fresh from the hospital after their encounter with the Jackalope King, they now faced an equally daunting challenge. As Enzo hurled a roaring fireball at the wolves, they nimbly dodged and sprang towards the team. Overwhelmed, Zen Zai proposed a tactical retreat to Chun. Recognizing the dire odds they were up against, with a giant axe as his primary weapon, would cleverly place checkpoints and hidden surprises to make his journey through this fantastical realm even more thrilling. Nestled in the depths of the Demon Wolf dungeon was an Easter egg of significant consequence, granting players passage to the boss room without requiring any battles. Normally, adventurers would find themselves at the bathroom's threshold following the conventional path. However, Wu had ingeniously carved a clandestine tunnel leading straight into the boss chamber. To avoid alerting the boss of his presence, he rummaged through his inventory, unearthing a delectable roasted pig. This pig was more than mere sustenance. Wu ingeniously combined it with a concoction of potent sleeping mushrooms, heavy-duty sleeping pills, and a dash of alcohol to create a foolproof sedative. Stealthily approaching the dosing to headed Volf, he offered the laced meal, then swiftly retreated. De Volf, awakened by Wu's motion, found the sight of the roasted pig puzzling yet irresistible. One had lunged for the meal, inciting the wrath of the other, and a voracious quarrel ensued. Amidst the clamor, Wu wondered if he should have prepared to roasted pigs, praying silently that the uproar would not rouse the boss. He waited anxiously for the sleep-inducing meal to work its magic. After several tense moments, the double-headed wolf finally succumbed to slumber, its silent form assuring Wu his plan had succeeded. Wu then cautiously approached half-beast's man Luca, although less physically formidable than the Volf. Luca held a critical advantage with his D-level. His weapon, the half-beast man's large axe, was renowned for its tornado dance ability, and boasted an attack power range between 35 and 50. This treasured artifact, rightfully belonging to the Beastman tribe's chieftain, was stolen by the rogue Luca, who couldn't help but lament setting the weapon's requirement at level 25 as he tiptoed towards it, grumbling about his past decisions. His movements, however, roused the boss from sleep. Acting swiftly, Wu added the axe to his inventory, just as the boss lunged at him. Although he evaded the boss's attack, the flying debris nicked him, reducing his HP by 20. Wu acknowledged that a direct hit could have cost him half his health. As the boss lunged again, Wu dodged, using the moment to fuel his strength, hastily consuming loud, junk spicy rabbit head from his inventory. He enhanced his speed by 5% for the next 5 minutes, while his Bunny Slayer title skill increased his berserk strength by 10% for 10 minutes. Brandishing dual shovels, he stood firm against the boss, determined to end the pursuit. The approaching boss, filled with wrath, was met with a chilling notification. Only 14 minutes remained to conclude the mission. Understanding that the moment to strike was upon him, was steeled himself for the confrontation. The sleeping double-headed Volf was mere steps away from them, oblivious to the rising tension. Suddenly, the beast made its move, hurling a powerful punch in Wu's direction. But Wu was ready. With a swift and sure movement, he blocked the attack with his sturdy shovel, causing sparks to fly. Clutching his weapon tighter, he counterattacked, his shovel biting into the creature's hide and causing 15 points of damage. However, his heart sank as he realized the blow barely faced the monster. To vanquish his adversary, he calculated he would need to land 200 hits of similar intensity. For a group, this would be an achievable goal, but the warrior to divert the creature's attention and withstand its blows. Others could consistently strike from the sides, but Wu was solitary with no luxury of time or aid. His challenge amplified when the creature displayed an unexpected skill, propelling a large rock towards him with lightning speed. Try as he might, he couldn't evade it in time. Struck hard, he suffered 60 points of damage and was forced back against the wall. Taken aback by this sudden turn, Wu realized the game system must have upgraded the creature's capabilities. This was not the same monster he had faced before. To his astonishment, the creature abruptly ceased its assault and began tugging at the chain of the slumbering double-headed Volf. Amid this chaos, Lucas, the half-beast man, began slapping the Volf, catching Wu off guard. Infuriated, he chastised the beast for its cowardice, complaining that he was battling solo, and yet it sought to rouse its ally. Analyzing his dwindling stats, Wu knew he couldn't afford to let the beast wake the Volf. Even if he gambled all his remaining points on bolstering his strength, he realized it wouldn't suffice, but he was not one to give in. With sheer determination to live, he staked everything, investing his last reserves into agility. He mused that he might be the most nimble level 10 player currently in the game. With renewed vigor, he charged at the beast, wielding his dual shovels, and inflicted 18 and 20 points of damage. In retaliation, the creature swiped with its razor-sharp claws, but Wu evaded, executing a graceful aerial roll, snuffing out the torches in his wake. Once he landed, he taunted the disoriented beast, claiming the recent attack was merely a diversion. His actual strategy was to plunge the battlefield into darkness, where his demon eyes granted him a distinct advantage. The beast, taken aback, sensed the presence behind it and swung around to block an incoming strike. Despite the beast's sharp instincts, was not deterred. With a battle cry echoing in the gloom, he danced through the air, slashing and plunging his shovel into the beast's neck, causing 130 points of damage. By striking its weak spot, he managed to reduce the creature's HP to 1817 from 2000. The creature attempted to retaliate, but Wu was already gone. As the beast searched for its adversary, a shovel suddenly whirred towards it. Wu then stabbed its other weak point, the knee, incapacitating it briefly. He seized this moment and, aiming for its eyes, he struck again, diminishing its vision and inflicting another 120 points of damage. In the ominous darkness, the formidable beast crumbled to the ground, a testament to the lethal efficiency of his covert assaults. Swiftly he advanced on the fallen creature, but it wasn't finished. In a fit of raw fury, it lashed out with a chain line nearby. The sudden strike caught him off guard, sending him crashing to the earth. The impact gouging 75 points from his total health. He was left with a scant 100 out of his original 250 GP. Wincing in pain, he flung open his inventory, his curse echoing in the cold air as he snatched up his medicinal aid amidst another savage attack. As he engaged his combat system again, a warning flashed. The creature was adapting to the dark. He hastily downed to medium-grade healing potion set to restore 100 GP within a brief respite of 10 seconds. With his health replenished, he stood his ground against the monster prepared for the onslaught. Leaping forward, he assaulted the creature's head with his shovel, following up with relentless strikes to its face, shoulder, hand and chin, until its HP dwindled to a threatening 650 out of 2000. Suddenly, an urgent notification blinked into existence. The fearsome demon-wolf dungeon boss, the half-beast's man, Luca, was entering its terrifying berserk mode, its HP now down to a mere third. Not a moment later, it erupted into berserk mode, and an ominous notification heralded that he was in its crosshairs. With frightening speed, it thrust a devastating punch his way. Desperate, he raised his shovel to block, but it was futile. The impact shattered his only weapon, the blow landing brutally in his stomach, launching him into a wall with critical damage of 100 points. Deadly wounded, he was acutely aware that another blow could spell his end. But as the beast towered above him, ready to deliver a fatal strike, he rolled away in the nick of time. He was back on his feet, taunting the creature with the promise of his own berserk mode. A quick glance at his mission timer showed he had only 4.5 minutes remaining. His berserk ability would be available in a scant 12 seconds, and his trump card, the demon race transformation skill, was at his disposal. Slowly, he began to morph into a demonic form, his stats swelling by 20%. The transformation, while brief, left him brimming with raw power, a force that he felt could even take down a level 30 player. The half-baseman Luca, despite its berserk frenzy, showed a glimmer of fear as he loomed monstrous and intimidating. The beast hurled stones in a futile effort, but he strode towards it, a picture of terrifying calm. A stone, large and threatening, hurtled towards him, but he snatched it midair, crushing it effortlessly. With a challenging smirk, he asked Peaceman Luca if it was ready for the onslaught about to be unleashed. Springing into the air, he closed the gap between them, promising a taste of his serious punch. He then delivered a volley punches to its face and chin, each one dealing damage anywhere between 130 to 170 points. Though he was armed with vast power by his state, he was shackled by its fleeting duration, a scant 30 seconds. Any failure to vanquish Boss Luca within this window would swing the battle's favor away from him. He couldn't risk allowing his adversary a single moment of respite. At this critical juncture, Kun Shin's team lay spent on the Demon Wolf dungeon's first level. So John, despite his exhaustion, felt a wave of relief sweep over him, while Zhong Ziai Kosh and them her magic wand teetering dangerously on the edge of breaking. Then an unexpected growl punctured the silence. Zhong, startled, questioned the source of the sound and its possible repercussions. Shun Shai, however, suggested it likely originated from a subterranean monster brawl. Qinshan called his team to rest but remain vigilant. Nearly a minute later, they moved towards the boss room, only to receive an unexpected accolade for clearing the Demon Wolf dungeon and defeating the boss half-beastman Luca. A befuddled Zhong queried his team on the ease with which they managed to overcome the dungeon. In contrast, within the boss room of the Demon Wolf dungeon, who experienced a triumphant leveling up thrice, a congratulatory message popped up for him, celebrating the completion of his demon profession change mission. Exhausted but relieved, Wu surveyed his loot. He noticed an enigmatic item named Weird Necklace of unknown level effect and rarity level, which he deduced to be of significant value. Among the numerous magic crystals, a perfect quality blue crystal caught his eye. A pleasant surprise, He was well aware that crystal ranks range from normal through pure to perfect. The luminosity of a perfect blue magic crystal outshone the dim lower quality normal crystals and even the brighter pure ones, making it a gem of high worth. Imagining the opulent feast he and Meng could enjoy, a wide smile spread across his face. Mun's declaration of love for him brought immense joy to his heart. He eyed his shattered shovels, acknowledging the need to find a craftsman who could forge him a robust weapon. After all, he had grown fond of using a shovel as his weapon of choice. As he held the necklace from his inventory, he pondered why he couldn't decipher its value, and whether the game had randomly added this item. His train of thought was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching the room where Thor's double-headed wolf was enjoying a peaceful slumber, to be stirred, signaling an impending conflict. Knowing the game rules well, who was aware that Thor's would awaken once the stone door was opened, and frustratingly, even the most potent sleeping potion wouldn't affect him in such a situation. With an exasperated sigh, he muttered an indistinct curse at the unseen architect of this confounding system. As a lurking wolf's senses sharpened, he knew an immediate escape was essential. His fingers closed around a conveniently hanging rope his ticket out, leaving tensions group to contend with the remaining four foes. He'd already vanquished the boss after all. The group soon breached the boss room, only to be met with a perplexing scene. The boss lay defeated despite the stone door having remained untouched. Gensi voiced his bewilderment at the dungeon's enigmatic workings, their astonishment only deepening at the sight of half-beast man Luca's lifeless body. A suggestion arose from Zhejiang. Perhaps the double-headed wolf had turned traitor, brutally ending the boss's reign. Enraged, the wolf turned on the group in a frenzy to assault. Their assessment of the dungeon expanded from merely peculiar to utterly lunatic. Despite this, the group rallied and successfully toppled for the double-headed wolf. A sobering confession came from Zhejiang. Their expedition into the treacherous depths of the dungeon had yielded scant rewards. A precious artifact was lost, only a handful of low-tier magic crystals were acquired along with a pile of worthless items, and no notable weapon was secured. As they processed their disappointment, a system notification materialized before Chuncheon. Their completion time for the Demon Wolf dungeon was a record-breaking 58 minutes and 2 seconds. A global announcement of this achievement was imminent, and the group was offered a choice to veil their identities. Though momentarily stunned, Chuncheon decided to reveal their names. The system then probed if they wished to assign a catchy name to their team. After a brief consideration, they settled on Flame Lizard Squad. As the celebratory announcement echoed worldwide, lauding the Flame Lizard Squad, Shen Chen, Shinkai Ziao Zhang Qianchen Sai, Jie Yun Kan and Zhang Wu for shattering the Demon Wolf dungeon's record. Each team member was bequeathed the title of Wolf Hunter. The wider player community marveled at their achievement, despite the use of artifacts. A mere 58 minutes for completion was a stunning feat. Zilchion assured Chuncheon that this newfound fame might pave the way to top-tier guild invitations. Their interface updated them on the benefits of the Wolf Hunter title, which included a 7% increase in attack power granted for vanquishing the Demon Wolf dungeon within an hour. Their eyes caught Wu, rehydrating on the dungeon's first floor. Speculation ran high that he'd struck gold within the dungeon depths. However, their relation faded as they spotted a few stray crystals on the ground. Zhejiang couldn't conceal his frustration, criticizing Wu for his minimal excavation yield. Despite Wu Yu's defense, that is, shovels had broken, Zhejiang continued his tirade, lamenting their ill luck, a hapless digger and a crystal haul that couldn't even cover their potion expenses. In the heart of the dungeon, Zhejiang had a reminder for who they had permitted him to claim the title freely, with the condition that they would hoard all the magic crystals, leaving him empty-handed. Yet, in an unexpected turn, Junxia doubled back, urging him to hold on. She pressed a lone crystal into his hands, fulfilling her promise. Gratitude welled up in him as he inquired about her name and tentatively her contact number. She obliged with a small smile, introducing herself as Jinzi, and passing on her digits. With a word of caution from Genzi about the fast-approaching closure of the dungeon, he agreed it was time to depart. On the other side of the dungeon's doors, players buzzed with anticipation, their confusion growing as the victorious squad lingered inside. When the door finally cracked open, a roar of applause swept through the crowd. They quickly swarmed the squad, pleading guild invites, seeking the secrets to the dungeon's clearance and proposing trades for any prized loot, craving peace over this bustling chaos. He slipped away unnoticed, abandoning Truncheon's group and the throne at the dungeon gate. He sought out a tranquil corner confident of remaining undisturbed. Once settled, he accessed the game interface, understanding fully well that he had achieved his mission to change professions. Demon warriors were revered for their rock-hard defenses and immense strength that could shrug off most weapons. Demon hunters possessed remarkable agility and formidable attack power, capable of converting every bit of their agility into raw, striking power, instilling fear in their adversaries. Lastly, demon warlocks were infamous for their potent souls, proficiency in diverse healing spells, and the power to conjure beings of death, spirits and skeletons. A formidable demon warlock could easily stand against a whole army. Given his Libra nature, decision-making wasn't his forte. He mulled over the options: a demon warrior as a sturdy tank, a demon hunter as a swift assassin, or a demon warlock as a formidable summoner. He yearned for the power of all three, and found himself wondering if such a choice was possible. However, the game informed him that he could pick only one profession unless he managed to obtain a coveted hero certificate, which would grant him an additional profession. He toyed with the idea of seeking the goddess's aid for a hero certificate, but decided against it, fearing her potential wrath. In the end, he chose the demon hunter. The profession resonated with him, allowing him to convert all his agility into attack power when needed. His decision was immediately followed by a flash of bright light, as the game confirmed his profession changed to demon hunter. His attributes were now different. He was at level 13 with 120 out of the required 380 experience points for the next level. He proudly held the titles of Rabbit Hunter and Wolf Hunter. Our protagonist found himself newly invigorated. His health points had soared to 300 and his mana to 150. His abilities saw an astounding growth: strength and agility up by 28, physical constitution by 14, wisdom by 12, perception by 13. 3 attribute points were still undecided, waiting to be distributed. Most thrilling was his new skill, the Hunt Mark. This skill turned him into a true demon hunter, enabling him to mark a target and become keenly aware of its location. The mark multiplied his damage twofold and revealed the enemy's Achilles heel. The Hunt Mark could tag one target at a time, resetting its cooldown upon the target's death. A failure, however, imposed a stiff 24-hour penalty. Activating this skill consumed 50 mana points, a price he was more than willing to pay for the advantages that offered, especially in one-on-one duels. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing elsewhere. Dean Yun at the Player Association's Nerve Center reported to his superior Lakyu. A fierce battle was underway at the Skyline Tree's western battleground, pitting the Goddess Martial Artists Guild against a horde of Dark Elves. The toll was devastating: 40 players dead, the Goddess Martial Artists missing in action, and a co-leader of the clan tragically killed. The Goddess Martial Artists Guild was a special group, a combat-focused guild under military jurisdiction, preferring open field battles against dungeon crawls. Upon hearing the news, Lakeview was apprehensive, questioning the spread of this calamity's knowledge. Being used assured him that the information was carefully contained to prevent widespread panic. Lakeview's worry deepened as Being Yun divulged a directive from higher-ups. They wanted other player guilds dispatched to the frontline for support. Far from the digital battles on the peripheries of S-City, a man journeyed through the Sky Tree shielded in a horse-drawn carriage. As he crossed the barrier, his phone sprang to life with a deluge of notifications. Seeing Ma's flurry of furious texts, he learned a month's illness and the urgent hospital visit. Later, in the sterile silence of S-City Central Hospital, Ma was gently peeling an apple beside the bed of the ailing Mon, who in his anxiety barged in demanding information about Mon's state. Ma, fruit knife clutched tight, shushed him. Mon had just drifted off to sleep. Ma's anger was evident as she questioned Wu's absence over the past days, blaming him for ignoring MG's escalating fever. Wu defended himself, arguing that he'd been tirelessly working to earn money. At Mo's skeptical inquiry about his success, he eagerly divulged that he had indeed made some gains. Wu was delighted at the prospect of covering the outstanding rent, medical fees, water leak repairs, and the price of the TV that Mon had damaged. Ma, a long-time landlord, voiced her doubts, having only witnessed his financial struggles. To her surprise, Wu presented the perfect blue crystals from his inventory, suggesting she sell them to cover expenses. At Mo's incredulous question of dungeon visits, Wu just shrugged it off, voicing his desire to be a miner. Suddenly, their discussion was interrupted by a knock on the door. A nurse queried who here is kin to Mon. Dr. Ju needed to confer some news. Both Wu and Ma answered in unison, causing a pause of mutual astonishment. who suggested that he should be the one to meet the doctor. Moments later, he found himself in Dr. Ju's somber office. "Prepare yourself," warned Dr. Ju before passing NGS diagnosis to Wu. Shell-shocked Wu read the unsettling revelation. NGS Bowie was flooded with an unusually high concentration of magic elements, symptomatic of magic elements syndrome. This once fabled disease had replaced cancer as the world's paramount health fear in this new epoch, brought about when a mysterious game came to Earth and altered the atmosphere. The air was now laced with a novel particle, the magic element. Whilst the magic element remained benign for most, in some, it was absorbed and accumulated with debilitating effects. Symptoms ranged from constant fevers and lethargy to loss of appetite and alarming black dots. Medicine stood powerless against the syndrome. Only palliative treatment was possible. Yet, Dr. Ju confessed his worrying that even this might fail given MGS magic element levels were tenfold out of an average patient. Grief-stricken who sat on a bench gripping MGS prognosis tightly. Despite everything, Meng's survival was a marvel. Yet Wu knew surrender was not an option. He resolved to journey to the dreaded burial ground, a place rumored to house the mythical lasso's tears, and S-rank curative that could obliterate all illnesses. The item bore the name of the goddess of light and hope, whose tears, according to legends, held miraculous healing powers. Yet it was located in a site symbolizing death, the burial ground, a perilous dungeon capped at a party of 1 and restricted to level 10 to 30 players. Wu knew it was a solo mission. The odds of survival were slim, but who had faith in his evolution from a mere horned rabbit slayer. Back in MGS room, Ma questioned Wu about the doctor's report. He masked the truth, attributing NGS condition to an ordinary fever that required additional funds. Infuriated, Ma protested the insinuation they depleted the $3,000 contributed earlier that day. Ma assured Wu the rent could wait till Meng recovered. Seeing his distress, touched by Ma's compassion, Wu broke into tears. Ma responded that without Meng, who would have been ousted long ago. Playfully chiding him, she noticed his dirt-caked self, urging him to clean up and leave Meng's care to her for the night, brushing off layers of grit and grime from his body. He acknowledged the remnants of his recent struggle in the demon-involved dungeon, a testament to a grueling battle with the boss. His body bore the badgers of an adventurer, dirt covered and bruised. Heeding the sage advice of his mentor Ma, he decided to freshen up before anything else. Despite Ma's and patience and urging him to leave, he stuck to his resolve. As the warm water cascaded over his battle-weary frame, he was struck by the profound changes his body had undergone since his alliance with the demon race. A visceral craving for destruction had taken root within him. His power had surged exponentially. His capabilities now far exceeded those of level 20 players, even though he himself was only at level 13. His hunt marked skill bolstered his confidence, allowing him to venture alone into D-ranked dungeons without fear. However, conquering a C-ranked dungeon would still present a daunting challenge. To stand a chance, he knew he had to hone his combat skills further. Emerging from his contemplation and the showers of S-City, he found himself in the vibrant Chang'an street. The street thrummed with activity, brimming with players haggling over weapons in its bustling marketplace. His attention was caught by the mournful wails of a caged monster. The seller was coaxing a prospective beer, reassuring her of the pet's safety. To demonstrate, he pressed a button, prompting a jolt of electricity to search through the monster, leaving it whimpering in the cage. Feeling pity for the injured creature, he couldn't help but notice the brutal irony. The world had changed dramatically, yet humanity's ruthlessness persisted. After witnessing this, he continued his journey. Soon arriving at the magic crystal exchange store, he observed the fluctuating exchange rate of crystals, his heart sinking at the decrease. His fellow players shared his frustration, but they all knew they were left with no alternatives. Retrieving a handful of crystals from his inventory, he approached the counter. The attendant welcomed him and appraised the crystals for 155 for E rank and 965 for D rank. He hesitated momentarily before producing another crystal. Upon inspection, the attendant's surprise was palpable. It was a D rank perfect magic crystal. Despite its apparent value, a man from the crowd dismissed it as nothing more than a crafting ingredient for a D rank weapon, adding that its value had significantly depreciated over the past 6 months. Undeterred, the attendant offered $10,000 for the crystal. Agreeing without hesitation, he secured the deal. The final transaction, even after tax deductions, deposited a handsome sum of $133,200 into his account. His day ended with a visit to Lao Cao's renowned weapons store. As he sauntered through the marketplace, his eyes fell upon a wine frost longsword tagged at $55,000 and a water crystal dagger worth $95,000. With a theatrical flourish, he exited the shop, loudly decrying the lack of superior wares. Truthfully, though, his purse simply couldn't bear such weight. Later, his gaze was drawn to a lustrous pair of blades discarded on the street. He quickly recognized these as the recursive weapons of Boulder, packing a potent attack strength of 1445. These were B-rank weapons, remarkable in that they bore no level restrictions. They carried the capacity to amplify damage to death spirits and consume death souls. Human wielders, however, would pay a cost of 10% reduction in HP for each enhancement to the weapon's attack power, up to a maximum of 20 stacks. The swords were relics from the god of light, Boulder, fashioned from parasitic tree branches found only in the divine lands. They bought a curse resulting from Boulder's divine betrayal, each possessing a trio of astonishing effects. He decided to haggle with the seller over the $15,000 price tag, arguing the weapon's unsuitability for humans. The seller was unmoved, countering with the item's B-rank status and offering him the option to walk away. Not to be dissuaded, he unveiled a large axe from his inventory, proposing a trade. The seller, eyeing the large axe, noted it was only a D-rank weapon. Surprisingly, he accepted the trade, conceding that he had struggled to sell the swords for several days. As he walked off, a smug grin stretched across the seller's face, convinced he had scored a fabulous bargain. If only he had known that Wu wasn't a human, he might have been dumbstruck into oblivion. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Wu found Meng and Ma dozing peacefully. With tender care, he covered Ma with a blanket and quietly requested the nurse to upgrade room 27 to a VIP seek room. Later, the sound of her phone notification roused Ma. She was stunned to see a generous transfer of $245,400 from John Wu, covering all hospital expenses and 5 months of rent. We use accompanying message revealed his settlement of all the debts alongside a request for Ma to care for Meng during his forthcoming absence. Ma's reply was a mixture of skepticism and indignation, questioning the necessity of a VIP sick room for a mere fever and flu. Deep in the Great Rift Valley, Wu pressed on, aware that despite the looming city skyline framed by trees, he had no choice but to traverse the territory on foot. Wu, a demon of exceptional physical prowess, faced a journey of 30 kilometers. A task such as this was a mere trifle for his enhanced physique. As he studied his map, the name Darren Village caught his eye, a name not unknown to him from his past experience in game design. The elusive burial ground, he recalled, was cleverly hidden deep within the mist fog forest, accessible only when the dungeon was revealed. The key to this mystery was a mission map found in Baron's Village, a bustling hub of high-ranking players and a critical resupply point in the western defense sector. Within this busy settlement, a man stood, his voice echoing in the market square, asking if anyone could hear him. His strange condition for sharing missions was to provide him an attractive companion. One man, so how could no longer contain his fury. Drawing his sword, he was quickly restrained by his companions, who warned him of the severe consequences of attacking an NPC. So was seething with frustration, this drunken trickster had taken him for half a year's savings, offering no equipment in return, only to ask for more. Just then Will emerged from the crowd. Spotting the man, he heaved a sigh of relief and moved towards him. How, trying to spare with the same fate, warned him against the man's trickery. Ignoring the warning, Will approached the man, who promptly repeated his demand for a beautiful woman's company. In response, Wu, with a smirk, produced a risque magazine from his inventory. The crowd gasped, while the man's eyes widened with curiosity, revealing a pile of similar magazines. Who coolly asked if these would suffice. Quick to hide his excitement, the man snatched them up, but warned that obtaining good missions wasn't as simple as that. He demanded a bottle of wine. Without missing a beat, Wu offered him an expensive liquor named Fly to the Sky, its price tag a staggering $5,000. How watched in disbelief as the man greedily consumed the costly drink, satisfied with the taste but not quite appeased. The man had one more demand, a love letter to his neighbor Juliet. Fighting back his annoyance, Wu composed an eloquent and heartfelt letter, much to the admiration of Hao. However, upon delivering the letter, was met with a furious butcher, Juliet's husband, who threatened them with violence for their insincere advances towards his wife. Wu enraged, questioning the absurdity of the mission's design. Despite the turmoil, The drunken man was delighted with Chuang's efforts, finally offering him the mission. Wu could only shake his head in disbelief, his mind whirling with thoughts about the insane tasks he had undertaken. In a sudden burst of light, an interface materialized before Wu. It displayed his mission to recover the mortal remains of the inebriated Kellen's son Kushana, a youthful adventurer who'd embarked on a daring journey and never returned. Whispers suggested because Shonda had fallen in the deathly silent expanse known as the burial area, and his grief-stricken father Kalen had turned to Wu in a desperate plea for closure. Kalen had armed Wu for this quest with a map and an intriguing artifact, a bell. The map, old and worn, carried an ominous marking of the burial area, and a place noted as the home of a bloodthirsty demon tree. The bell, known as the Undead Bell, was a mystical object ranked B with the ability to fend off undead forces, a creation of the desperate father. The Undead Bell was a beacon of hope in his wish to bring his son back. Even if in death, the bell had an impressive potential of inflicting substantial damage on undead and death spirits, followed by an eerie silence effect that lasted for an excruciating 10 seconds. Curious onlookers and fellow players quickly turned their attention to Wu, with their eyes filled with intrigue and hope. They implored him to share the mission. A level 47 archer even suggested combining their strength to accomplish the task. Wu, however, graciously declined their offers, expressing his decision to undertake the mission alone and recommending them to continue their own quests. As he exited, his figure fading from sight, he remained oblivious to the secret of observers perched on high. One of these unseen watchers rallied his companions, his voice an ominous whisper, declaring that once Wu had stepped outside the village boundaries, the mission and the precious equipment would fall into their hands. The tale progressed as Wu embarked on his journey, shadowed by figures clad in mysterious robes. A child, her eyes wide with awe, pointed towards Wu, confiding in her uncle about the historic mission bestowed upon him. The girl then trailed behind Wu, her curiosity piqued, suggesting they continue to observe and decipher the true nature of Wu's task. The air grew tense when one robed figure licked his blade ominously. His eyes locked onto the girl, making her question their ill intent. Chen, the girl's uncle, responded by tightening his grip on her shoulder and quickly explaining her youthful naivety to the threatening figure, pleading for his understanding, despite her protests. Chen reprimanded her, reminding her to respect the space for adult conversations. As one of the robed figures proposed they leave before losing sight of Wu, the group dispersed, leaving Chen to sternly warn his niece to keep her distance from such men in the future. The girl then questioned why Chen, with his superior abilities, behaved so deferentially. He explained the complexities of dealing with metaphorical poisonous snakes and how her limited experience in the Great Rift Valley hadn't exposed her to its treacherous rules yet. He painted the picture of the valley being a hotbed for crime, with its residents falling prey to these villains more often than any beast. When the girl asked why the authorities were inactive against such villains, Chen revealed the grim truth of their underground society. Surveillance, such as CCTV cameras, was near impossible to install, making monitoring and investigation efforts futile. The unsettling reality was that occasional deaths were a part of their norm, and those navigating the treacherous world of the Great Rift Valley needed to stay ever vigilant. He inquired, and the frightened girl affirmed that anyone who fell under the radar of these venomous serpents was in grave danger. Chen concurred, advising her that the naive or avaricious individual is bold enough to embark on such quests. Solo typically met a sinister end. He suggested that her be later will reach the ominous threshold of the mist fog forest. Tearing over his shoulder, Wu couldn't help but equate his pursuers with the symbolic poisonous snakes, wondering if they were scheming to strike. Stepping into the foreboding woodland despite the unnerving fog that blanketed the forest, impairing visibility, he pressed onward. An unseen foe knocked an arrow and let it fly towards Wu. With a quick sidestep, Wu barely avoided the missile and took shelter behind a nearby tree. His eyes scanning for the silhouettes of his attackers, of which he spotted for one of the men taunted the archer for his missed shot, nudging him to unleash the power of his snake cane. Unfazed, he assured his comrade of turning Wu into nothing more than ash. A blazing serpent emerged from the cane, barreling towards Wu and obliterating the tree he hid behind. Wu barely escaped, puzzled as to how his refuge had been exposed. Amidst his retreat, the archer ridiculed the cane wielder for his own failed attempt, noting the irony in his critique of his archery. While fleeing, Wu's instincts kicked in, signaling imminent danger. Activating his demonic eye, he sighted an enemy about poised to pounce. The predator dived, only to be intercepted by Wu's swift swordplay. In the heat of battle, the assailant speculated that Wu must be an assassin, given his adeptness at sensing covert threats. A man named Jane commanded the group to relentlessly assault Wu and prevent his escape at all costs. The archer then launched a flurry of arrows skywards. Wu disengaged from his adversary only to sense the impending danger above. Glancing upwards, he spotted the rain of arrows, and with split-second precision, he parried the closest ones. Their tactics became clear to him: distance attacks to hinder his movements, stealthy traps, and broad destruction. Despite his deafness, a couple of arrows found their mark, depleting his HP by 20 and 23 respectively. Wu made a hasty retreat, glancing at his map and acknowledging the synchronized assault of his enemies, a telltale sign of their long-standing alliance. Despite the odds, a confident smart graced his lips. His sprint was abruptly stopped by a towering tree barring his way. An enemy gloated at Wu's apparent deadlock. Wu shot back, arguing that their relentless chase forced him to run. The archer, furious, took aim at Wu, promising his impending doom, but Wu with an air of nonchalance dodged the arrow, causing it to pierce the tree. To everyone's surprise, the tree shuddered, its roots convulsing. It was the mythical guardian of the Mist Fog Forest, a level 40 to be ranked bloodthirsty demon tree with unique skills and puncture and bloodthirst awakened by the arrow's impact. As the tree's roots began to arrive, the archer's earlier bravado dissolved into sheer panic. In a desperate plea, he implored their leader John to aid him. As the menacing gaze of the enemy leader bore down on him, the archer's calls for help echoed with increasing urgency, one of his comrades' quest. Without missing a beat, the staff-wielding warrior sprung into action, brandishing his snake's staff. However, in a cruel twist of fate, he accidentally injured the archer. As the enemy's onslaught began, the archer demanded an explanation for his companion's seemingly traitorous act. They revealed the boss's attention had been inadvertently drawn to him. Therefore, once he was dispatched, the boss's focus would naturally shift to the next nearest combatant. The archer met his end consumed by the boss, who swiftly took on a skeletal form. Meanwhile, his compatriots coolly explained that the sacrifice was part of their plan to avoid direct encounter with the boss. Next, the venomous snake sought escape under Wu's watchful gaze. Wu had anticipated this display of survival instincts, where the snakes would forsake their own kind to save themselves. Amid their retreat, John was alerted to an unexpected development. The staff wielder explained that, surprisingly, the boss was not targeting the child but him. The ground ruptured under the relentless pursuit of the boss's deadly roots. Suddenly, the roots broke through the surface, coiling around the group, and launching a surprise attack. The staff wielder, caught in the root snare, pleaded for John to quickly devise a strategy to save him. In the nick of time, just as the staff wielder braced himself for an attack, the stealthy assassin activated his cloaking ability and announced his departure with a taunt. In a shocking turn, the roots pivoted and ensnared the assassin, draining his life force and leaving behind a skeletal husk. The staff wielder, struggling to regain his footing, predicted their dire fate. John observed an interesting pattern. The boss had initially bypassed both Wu and the staff wielder, instead targeting the fleeing assassin Zhou. This observation led him to believe the boss's attacks were not exclusively aggression-driven. He hypothesized that the boss used wave-like senses to target its victims, indicating that remaining stationary might prevent detection and subsequently attacks. Furthermore, Zheng noticed that Wu, who had been utterly still, was left unscathed. He inferred that Wu must have already figured out the boss's attack modus operandi. Zio's terrified screams brought Yung's attention back to the immediate danger. As he attempted to escape, a hostile root tailed him, ready to strike. John shouted a warning to Zhou, advising him to halt movement to avoid an attack. Heeding John's advice, Zhou froze, and to his relief, the pursuing root also ceased its chase. John then strategized for Zhou to unleash his flame snake on Wu, who was conveniently positioned at the boss's core. In a flurry of fury, Zhou commanded his snake cane to attack Wu, voicing a fatal curse. Wu, with an uncanny sense of foresight, evaded the attack, seeking refuge behind a tree. Zhou, in the throes of desperation, turned his fire skyward, fearing collateral damage to the formidable boss. His attack detonated in the air, a firework of impending doom. Confounded, he sought insight from John as to why the boss hadn't seized upon Wu's evasive maneuvers. John, however, was just as baffled. Wu, in this short, heart-pounding span, had deciphered the bloodthirsty demon tree's attack pattern. He also respected the venomous snake's sly prowess. Any creature marked as their prey would find escape a fleeting dream. But Wu's resolute fear had no foothold in this deadly game of predator and prey. He delved into his armory, procuring his bow and arrow, honing his aim on Zhou. Zhou responded with a burst fireball attempting to quash Wu's arrow assault. The Chuang interjected, warning Zhou of his calculated bait. Zhou's fireball inadvertently struck the boss, propelling Zhou into a whirlpool of shock and panic. The roots of the boss sprung forth, impaling Zhou. Unflinching, Wu focused his aim again, this time at Zhang. Zhang, demonstrating agility, parried the arrow rain with his sword, transitioning into a frenzy berserker mode, while ridiculing Wu's audacity. With unwavering resolve, Zhang stormed towards Wu, pledging to show him the vast divide in their abilities. He posited that the boss might have a blind spot, a reason for Wu's apparent invincibility. He slashed through the roots, taunting Wu that his hideout behind the boss was no sanctuary. Yet Wu held a grudging respect for Zhang. How could anyone be so powerful, he wondered, witnessing Jing clashing with the boss. Wu knew the abilities of a berserker, the potential to enter berserk mode, a status that for 5 brief minutes boosted all the player's attributes by 50% as Jane caused the earth to tremble beneath him and lunged at Wu, promising cataclysmic defeat. Wu recognized the bloodthirsty demon tree as a formidable wild boss, more potent than even some C-rank dungeon bosses. Wu pondered the source of Jane's unyielding confidence, and it dawned on him. An artifact. Zhang was armed with an artifact of legend, the Flame Dragon's Roar, a D-level relic. Its power was legendary. The Flame Dragon's Roar unlocked from a crystal sphere inflicted broad-scale area damage with an explosive intensity. Zhang brandished this fearsome weapon, bellowing threats of Wu's imminent demise. It was clear Jane's reckless bravado was backed by a lethal artifact. Zhang then unleashed the Flame Dragon's Roar, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. The villagers of Darren Village looked on in awe, recognizing the ominous mushroom cloud billowing from the mist fog forest. They knew only a C-rank artifact worth millions could unleash such devastation. At the fringe of the forest, Chin and the child shielded their faces from the resulting debris. The child, wide-eyed with terror, asked his uncle if the individual at the heart of the explosion could survive. In an urgent attempt to check on Zhang, she was stopped by Chin. He firmly took her hand, steering her to safety, firmly reminding her of the inherent danger. The perilous area had held only danger from an imminent blast. Meanwhile, the bloodthirsty demon tree ignited with fierce flames, and Zhang was a fallen figure nearby, who, standing at a safe distance, paused for a sip of water. Acknowledging the fate he had narrowly avoided, he had recognized the menacing power of the artifact far more threatening than the boss itself. Zhang, much like a cunning snake, had chosen to forsake his allies rather than risk using the artifact that could have ended him too. As Wu approached the stricken Zhang, he noted his impressive collection of magic crystals. Suddenly, Yong's hand whipped out in a swift attack. Wu, ever vigilant, sprang back just in time. A surprised Zhang questioned his detection, only to be met with Wu's playful scorn. Wu explained the signs of a player's demise and how Zhang's scatter items weren't the usual neat arrangement. He accused Zhang of a deceptive plot, throwing out his possessions as a tantalizing trap for Wu, intending to strike while he was mesmerized by the bounty. Zhang appreciated the astute observation with a laugh, even playfully comparing Wu to a venomous snake. But Wu was all too aware of his role as the game designer. When pressed about his survival, Zhang, teetering on the brink of death, saw no harm in revealing his secret. He had 2 unique artifacts, the Flame Dragon Roar and the Flame Dragon Protection, the latter being an expensive asset meant for combating a goddess martial artist. Yet, in an ironic twist, it had been wasted on Wu. Incredulous as to why the boss had not attacked Wu, Zhang was met with a simple response. They shared the same lineage, both hailing from the demon race. Zhang dismissed this as a jest, mockingly telling Wu to quit his lies. But upon seeing the change in Wu's demeanor, Zhang realized that the truth might be lying with his fallen body. With a knowing smirk, Wu activated his hunt mark, which highlighted Zhang's weak spots. It revealed that Zhang was barely hanging on to life, critically injured from the previous blast. A puzzled Zhang felt like a hunted prey, questioning the possibility of the young lad being stronger. He dismissed the thought as a farce since Wu was not even at level 20. In response, Wu underwent a transformation, lunging forward in his demon form, ready to confront Zhang. Engaged in a sudden battle, Zhang was caught off guard by Wu's fervent sword strike. Uncertain of Wu's identity, he implored for an answer. Yet, as he sank to his knees and surrendered, he realized the truth was akin to the divine martial artist, both entities transcending humanity. With the last resentful glance, he denounced Wu as a demon. A reward notification sprang into view, revealing his victory over a high-level player. It was an impressive feat, granting him 19,000 experience points and propelling him to level 17. Moreover, he had accomplished a hunting mission. His reward was 1 hunt value point, marking his first point out of a possible 100. The substantial experience he gained from the single-player kill left him pondering why he hadn't heard such strategy from others. Was it because of his demonic nature? Alongside this, he observed the hunt mark skill, which intriguingly seemed upgradable. He contemplated whether Dark Elves could also level up by hunting players. We then explored his inventory. The defeated players had left behind a trove of items, among which he discovered a unique sword. The moment he gripped it, it trembled unendingly. Its title was the Vibrator Metal Longsword, a B-rank weapon boasting an attack power of 6,575. Crafted from vibrating rock, the sword vibrated vigorously when wielded, thus escalating its destructive potential. However, its use was confined to players, and he surmised that only those of the Berserker class could maximize its capabilities. Next, he stumbled upon Wutu's transformation ring and a rank item enabling the wearer to use 2 artifacts at once. It was the magnum opus of Wutu, a genius artifact researcher of the Elves race. The ring he knew only appeared in B rank or higher dungeons, which only formidable guilds had the strength to conquer. He pondered over how John could have acquired such a valuable item. Soon, people began to flock towards the site of their explosive battle. The Green Goat Guild's 9th Attack Force Squad was among them. Their leader was notified about a wild boss attack. The discovery of 4 player corpses left them stunned, but seeing John sprawled on the ground elicited a gasp of disbelief. Recognizing the fallen player, he could only utter, "My little brother." Word soon spread that the guild leader sibling, who had been averse to dungeon raids, had become a notorious poison snake. Despite exploiting his elder brother's position and receiving rare equipment, Junk's defeat to a wild boss was baffling. An urgent report from one of the men relayed the unsettling news. Their entire inventory had been plundered. The leader, piecing together the puzzle, recognized the grisly work of a wild boss in the 3 lifeless bodies before him. Yet something was off. Jenk's chest bore a wound that spoke not of beastly claws, but have a keen weapon's edge. Swiftly, the leader instructed his team to alert the guild and initiate a hunt for any lurking suspects in the vicinity. Amidst this chaos, a new scene unfolded. Wu, standing before the entrance of the burial dungeon. This was a single-player challenge, a test of courage and skill ranked at C difficulty. Pushing the ancient gate ajar, Wu ventured into the first floor, ominously known as the Corpse's Corridor. A voice filled with disdain branded him an intruder, threatening him with severe consequences. In response, the skeletal remains lining the corridor stirred to life, coalescing into formidable foes: a level 27 warrior, a level 26 spearman, and a level 28 archer, all crafted from bone. This deviation from Wu's original design was glaring. The first floor should not have housed such potent skeletal adversaries. A chill realization dawned on Wu. Once again, the system had meddled with his game data and codes. As the skeletal warrior raised its weapon for the first strike, Wu parried with his blade. The force sent shockwaves through him, cracking the ground beneath and nearly toppling him over. Such power in a mere skeleton was baffling. While Wu grappled with the warrior, the spearman seized the opportunity to strike from the flank. Wu narrowly dodged the attack with a mid-air lead. From afar, the skeleton archer ready to narrow, capitalizing on Wu's vulnerable state. Wu, cognizant of his disadvantage in the constricted corridor, eyed the arrow zipping toward him. With swift reflexes, he deflected it, yet the sheer force propelled him backward. Crashing into the cold stone wall, he marked the archer skeleton for termination. Despite the looming challenges, retreat was not an option. He weaved past his bony adversaries to confront the archer first, a swift decapitating strike down to the archer skeleton with Wu's blade connecting at the weak point and inflicting 360 damage. A bonus effect from his weapon tacked on an additional 430 damage. As the skeletal remains crumbled, he bagged 300 XP and bumped up his hunt value by 1. A timely notification chimed in stating his boulder's cursed sore had absorbed the skeleton archer's soul, boosting his soul power to 1 out of 20. Each increment in soul power conferred a 1% power bonus and 2% death spirit's magic resistance. Understanding that his sword's special effect delivered more punch than a standard weak point strike, Wu found his low level hampered his overall damage output. His immediate goal was to power level and neutralize the spearman skeleton next. With the ghost of a smile, he sprang toward it, weapon at the ready. In mere moments, he had felled the remaining skeletons. The daunting foes were less intimidating once he discerned their attack patterns. Victory was not a matter of brute strength, but of strategic understanding. Suddenly, the mound of skeletal remains stirred once more. Whirling around instinctively, he detected an eerie change in the atmosphere, only to find skeletal figures hiding in the shadows. It seemed they were intent on resurrecting their fallen brethren who had launched a surprise assault. Yet within moments, he had them cornered against the wall. The realization dawning that these were no ordinary skeletons. They were conjurers capable of summoning skeletal soldiers. He seized the opportunity, commanding them to conjure more skeletal warriors to fuel his quest for power. An uncanny smile spread across his face as he taunted them, inquiring if his commands had been heard. With a show of might, he flung a skull into the crowd, racking up considerable experience points. Battling wave after wave of skeletal foes, he soon reached the milestone of level 20, unlocking an enhancement for his marking skill. His aptitude for detecting vulnerabilities increased by 10%, and he could now mark two foes simultaneously. Serving his enhanced status, he mused that his inherent demonic abilities, coupled with his unique status as a demon hunter, made him a formidable match for even a level 30 player. His confidence and taking on Yang in combat was bolstered. However, in an unexpected twist, the skeletal mages chose suicide over submission. The idea of such creatures possessing the capability for self-destruction left him dumbstruck. With a sigh, he acknowledged the end of his experience grind, and veered towards another gate, primed to conquer the next level. As he shoved open the gate, a scene of bone-strewn chaos awaited him. Among the remnants, he spotted the remains of Catriona. Abruptly, torches sprang to life, illuminating the surroundings and revealing his location. Floor to the infamous Death Plaza. Looming before him were fully armored knights of levels 37 and 38, and a formidable skeleton lord whose level was unknown. The sudden slamming shut of the gate behind him sent a shiver of fear down his spine. Hadn't the ultimate adversary been rumored to lurk on the third floor? In frustration, he recognized the system's sly trick. Not only had the subterranean creatures been modified, but the dungeon's denizens had been reshuffled too. It was no longer the labyrinth he had created. One of the knights brandished its sword. He retaliated in kind, but found himself only able to divert the blow. The force was too much for him, compelling him to strike back at the knight, only to discover that his attack did nothing. The knight's invincibility left him stunned. He activated his hunt mark, but a system alert notified him that there were no vulnerabilities to exploit. The knights, he realized, were adorned in another weave armor, a prized creation of the elf tribe. When a knight lunged, he tried to parry, but the raw power behind the strike surpassed the skeletal foes he had previously defeated. Unable to fend off the blow, he was thrown back, a searing pain radiating from his abdomen that left him coughing up blood. Surveying the undead adversaries before him, he found his mind wandering to the ill-fated inebriate, whose journey had tragically ended here. The armored knight marched forward, halting mere steps away, prompting him to ponder the grim prospect of his life ending in this ominous dungeon. He mused over the perils and life-threatening risks inherent in navigating such dark labyrinths. Undeterred, the knight charged, launching an unyielding attack. As he collapsed, he could feel the rhythm of his heartbeat fading into oblivion. He was so drained that even the act of standing seemed Herculean. His mind turned with the fear that his journey may have reached its final chapter. He visualized the faces of Ma and Meng, offering them a silent apology. The abrupt beat from his monitor confirmed his worst fears. His primary heart had failed. In response, his demonic secondary heart was triggered into action. The demon heart was now active. He found himself sprawled on the cold floor under the watchful gaze of the knights. As one prepared to deal the deathly blow with his sword, he snapped open his eyes and sprang to his feet. His fists connected with the knight's midsection before the sword could reach him, his taunts echoing around the chamber at their slow reflexes. The knight stumbled backward, clashing into the others and causing fragments of their faces to scatter. His scream informed him that with each beat of the demon heart, a 50% boost was granted to all his attributes. Fear was no longer a part of his emotional palette. His strength soared to 70, to agility to 53, physique to 21, wisdom to 19, and sense to 20. Empowered and lighter, he realized that the demon heart's enhancement would be his weapon against the berserker knights. When a knight lunged at him, he sidestepped and slammed the knight's face into the ground with ease. But he was perplexed when the knight didn't stir. Grabbing its head confirmed its defeat, leaving him wondering why his experience points remained stagnant. His realization dawned. The armored knights were invincible. Boulder's cursed sword was impotent against them, for they were not death spirits, but mere marionettes of the boss. Checking his inventory, he understood that the moment he had set foot in this dungeon, he had been engaged in a battle with the boss. With a swift move, he unsheathed his vibro metal longsword, lunged at a knight and split him in two. His confidence soared as he surveyed the defeated knights. He sliced through the neck of a skeleton, pierced another's chest, and shattered the remaining with a crushing stomp. After an intense struggle, the final remnants of the skeletal knights were defeated. He turned his attention towards the imposing skeleton boss. As he raised his gaze, he was taken aback by his undivided attention fixed on him. The atmosphere was thick with tension as it drew its sword and took a sweeping swing. Although the blow missed him, he realized the gaping power chasm between them. He stood there astonished, questioning if he was truly within a C-rank dungeon. He was sure the boss had purposefully skewed its attack. A direct hit would have spelled his demise. Despite the demon heart and undead bell, his intuition urged him to proceed with caution against this formidable foe. The boss seemed to echo his thoughts, questioning his humanity. A sudden question jolted him from his reverie, a stark reminder of the goddess's curse, and his victory over Chuang that afforded him new experience. In response, he affirmed that he was no longer a part of the human race. The boss then made a surprising declaration. If he was no longer human, there would be no need to slay him. Confusion knotted his mind as he sought to understand the boss's motives. The boss informed him of a familiar energy it detected from his person and instructed him to reveal his inventory. As he sifted through various items, he wondered if any resonated with the boss's claims. Even the momentary distraction for Risk magazine only briefly diverted the boss's focus. The boss restated its sensing of something emanating from him. His hands closed around a necklace, and he presented it to the boss. Shock flashed across the boss's face as it exclaimed that the search of a century had come to an end. The item known as the Skyline Tree's Key was a sacred artifact of legendary level safeguarded by the elf tribe for countless generations. Its power was astounding, capable of controlling the Skyline Tree, erecting an impenetrable barrier and even coaxing the tree to flower and fruit. The resulting fruits would detonate upon touching the ground, leading to catastrophic damage. The revelation of the SSS rank item left him astonished. An underground dungeon dropping a legendary item seemed like a major glitch. He pondered whether the risk of his life was worthwhile to recover it, recognizing the formidable monster standing in his way. Just as he was grappling with these thoughts, an interface popped up, acknowledging the activation of the main mission, a request from the elf Prince Awesome. The Skyline Tree was under threat from an insidious energy. Amidst this unparalleled crisis, he was urged to deliver the Skyline Tree key to Elf King Nouveau, providing the king with the means to thwart the looming catastrophe. The thought of the skeletal boss being the elf Prince Asif began to make sense, especially considering the knight's elf armor. However, his immediate concern was to regain the key. He would mull over his subsequent moves later, but for now, he resolved to head to the Royal Palace and Skyline City on the Harvest Day, a sacred event for the elf tribe. Meanwhile, in the midst of the festivities, the elf prince Alset remained oblivious to the fact that an intruder was perusing the royal relics, ultimately making off with the Skyline Tree's key. With the key's loss, the tree's protective shield dissipated, inciting conflict between the dark elves and the forest elves. The elves held Assad accountable for the calamity, thus stripping him of his royal status and exiling him from the Skyline Tree. Undeterred, the deposed Assad embarked on a mission to retrieve the stolen key. His journey was marred by an ambush in the mist forest, proving lethal for everyone involved. The aftermath saw Assad's soul possessed by a malevolent force. Upon regaining consciousness, he discovered that he had become a lord of the burial dungeon, a captive in his own kingdom. 2 decades ago, a human had made his appearance. Os had harbored no desire to harm him. Yet the evil energy within him left him with no choice. Stunned by the revelation of a malignant force, Wu grappled with the question of his own humanity, a puzzle Offset had initiated. He hadn't envisioned this menacing energy in his game design, making its existence an enigma. Unfazed, Wu disclosed his noble mission to Offset, asking for loss of his tears. In a surprising turn, Offset confessed to once owning this coveted item, but out of ennui during his long imprisonment, he had quaffed it. Struck by this revelation, Wu knew he was outmatched against Offset, yet a whimsical notion dawned upon him, making a soup of Offset. The surprising appearance of a ring from Offset diffused Wu's frustration, and he learned that Lasso's tears weren't the sole means of rescue. Offset expounded that Lasso's tears potent as they were carried side effects, while the root ring might serve better. This fabled ring forged from the skyline tree's roots by woodland elves endowed the bearer with a shield against all ailments. Astounded Wu marveled at the invaluable artifact. Acid with a nonchalant air stated the ring's obvious worth. Overjoyed Wu expressed that the ring surpassed Loss's tears and its potential. All set agreed to bequeath the ring to Wu, but a tasker waited who in return. All set yearned for liberation. The souls ensnared alongside him in the burial dungeon, loyal followers who shared his fate needed freeing by the undead bell. Wu, torn, argued that the bell's ringing might obliterate the souls eternally. Unperturbed, Ast accepted this possibility, acknowledging their once-lived existence, but grudgingly understanding the undead bell's necessity. Yet distraught at using such a significant artifact in these circumstances, Wu summoned the courage to bring it. The luminous light that erupted enveloped the spirits, and as the glow dissipated, so did they. As their prince bade goodbye, All Set offered his brother Dean a final farewell. His loyal spirits at last found solace escaping their gloomy dungeon confinement. Wu questioned Asset's perpetual existence despite being a specter. Offset's enigmatic response indicated that his formidable strength had evaded the undead bell sweep. Concerned about his entrapment within the dungeon if Offset remained, Wu received an unexpected solution. Offset could simply conjure a transportation gate, which he promptly demonstrated. With the last request, All Set handed Wu a letter to be delivered to his father if their paths ever crossed. Stepping onto the transport gate, Wu gradually vanished, leaving All Set in solitude. Reveling in his privacy, All Set produced a hidden book, a provocative magazine. Excitedly flipping through the pages, he bemoaned his confinement, lamenting the missed opportunity to marvel at the world's beauties, evidently superior to the palace's elf maidens. In his mirth, All Set forgot a critical detail. The transport gate's destination was a wild card. His uncertainty about Wu's landing site heightened the suspense. In the aftermath of the goddess martial artist's disappearance, dark elves breached the humans' defensive line, heralding the commencement of a sinister offensive. In an unparalleled maelstrom of conflict, a gigantic eagle swooped upon a beleaguered man crying out for his captain's aid. Just in the nick of time, the captain Li Zhongyan, a stalwart figure from the Goddess Martial Artists Guild's second defensive team, intervened with a swift, forceful elbow. He sent the eagle crashing onto the ground. Resolute despite the danger, Captain Li extended a hand to his comrade Zhang Hao, offering solace amidst the chaos. Grasping Li's hand, Hao conveyed the grim news of their allies' demise, losing An Zhangzi. Despair dripped from his words as he pondered the futility of a war fought against adversaries lurking unseen, masterminding monstrous pawns. Despite the bleak outlook, Li emphasized their obligation to uphold humanity's bulwark until their leader's return. How tears tracing tracks down his face brought to light their leader's prolonged absence and the creeping dread that was settling in. In a dire prophecy, he voiced his fear that their end was inevitable without their leader. Abruptly, a single crimson petal drifted into view, followed by a rain of identical petals, perplexly traced their path back to the towering skyline tree, right as a dark elf signaled to retreat. As the enemy forces withdrew, human soldiers were left puzzled and shocked in their wake, and animated Hao announced the elven retreat to Li, rejoicing in their unexpected reprieve. Li, however, was confounded by this strategic move, considering the elves' clear upper hand. Suddenly, the tree's flowers matured into fruit that began to split and plummet. One such fruit rolled to Hao, who picked it up out of curiosity. Sensing imminent danger, Li shouted a warning, but it was too late. The fruit glowed a sinister red. In the nick of time, Hao hurled it away. The fruit exploded, gouging out a massive crater. As the remaining fruits ignited in a chain reaction, panic engulfed Hao, who cried out in fury, casting blame on the retreating elves. Concurrently, in the Forsaken Land, known as the Deceased Country, a transportation gate materialized, from which a cautious figure named Wu emerged. Confronted by a spectacle of fog, colossal tree roots and looming structures suspended from these roots, Wu was taken aback. Observing this bizarre landscape, he wondered whether he was deep within the skyline tree or in the sacred realm of the elf tribe. The shocking realization hit him hard. He was in the Deceased Country, a high-difficulty dungeon designed for a 20-person party. He cursed the skeleton asset for teleporting him to such a place. His attention returned to the dangling structures, and to his astonishment, one began to stir. As the enclosure broke apart, Wu found himself face to face with a formidable level 51 death elf warrior. As the monstrous creature lumbered towards him, its form eerily fluctuated, shaping its limb into a lethal weapon. Springing up with uncanny speed, it lunged at him. Although he managed to deflect its onslaught, he trembled, recognizing the cavernous disparity in their strengths. Invoking his title of Wolf Hunter, he activated his hunt mark, amplifying his offensive might by a meager 7%. With a surge of adrenaline, he counterattacked, only to discover that this creature was a corpse, lacking any clear vulnerability. It was then that he spotted the crimson line tracing its spine. As it snapped its jaws at him, he understood that his only chance of victory was severing this crimson lifeline. With a mighty sword thrust, he repelled the creature and leapt behind it, slicing the red line. As if a puppet severed from its strings, the creature fell, and he was rewarded with a windfall of experience points. Astonished by the experience haul, he realized the secret to efficient victories, unearthing and exploding weaknesses. His thrill, however, was interrupted by a sobering thought. The crypt of the fallen kingdom was notorious for its time constraint, a place where the living mustn't disturb the dead. If he lingered too long, he would be forever damned. Suddenly, a disquieting noise echoed from the rutan objects around him. Whirling around, he saw them cracking open, revealing more death elves. The prospect of a group attack sent a shiver down his spine. He was barely able to combat one, let alone several frantic he prayed to offset for extraction, while the oblivious deity was absorbed in admiring the physical forms depicted in a magazine. In an unexpected turn, he sneezed, bafflingly questioning whether skeletons could send ease. Eventually, the death elves were defeated, leaving him drained and exhausted. But his trials were far from over. His hand jerked uncontrollably, assailing him. His heart pounded with fear as he realized that he was losing command over his body due to some malignant virus. If this corruption pervaded his entire body, he would be trapped, never able to leave. In his desperation, he recalled the ring gifted by Offset. Suppressing his rebellious hand, he concluded that the tree, being an offshoot of the skyline tree, could resist this corruption. As he slid the ring onto his rogue hand, the virus instantly disappeared. Looking at his hand with a mix of relief and exasperation, he wondered whether the mischievous skeleton prince had deliberately thrust him into this predicament. But his troubles were unrelenting. The objects dangling from the tree stirred once more, and a fresh horde of death elves sprang forth. Just as he braced himself, embracing his demonic form for a counterattack, a radiant pink light blasted the elves. Stunned, he watched as the light reduced the elves to ashes. He found himself captivated by this powerful light. Curiosity piqued about its mysterious source. A silhouette materialized amidst the light, taking the form of a divine female martial artist, the reputed goddess. His heart pounded in relief, although curiosity tinged his gratitude. What was she doing here instead of battling on the front lines? The mystery compounded when the goddess angled into a combat stance with him as her target. Startled, he threw his hands up in confusion, his mind racing to understand her hostile posture. In a cruel twist of fate, he realized the ramifications of his demonic form to the goddess. He was not a friend, but a foe. Fending off the earlier undead was one thing, but contending with the goddess, that was tantamount to courting death. She remained on guard, scrutinizing him, until her sword finally relaxed. A strange recognition flickered in her eyes as she studied the demon, feelings of familiarity clouding her thoughts. She somehow felt connected to this creature, to this Wu. Meanwhile, in the austere Player Management Association building, Being Yun presented a grim report to Lei. The recent explosion had resulted in an alarming toll on their players. The Goddess Martial Artists Guild had suffered a staggering loss of 166 members, with another 280 having their fighting spirits snuffed out. The Lightning Dragon Guild to mourn 5 leads and saw the morale of 102 members shattered. The Green Sheep Guild reported 30 casualties and 72 members who no longer had the heart to fight. The Yun Tang Guild, smaller in size, still recorded 13 deaths and 51 warriors devoid of spirit. They'd lost the front line, and survivors had found refuge in a quaint Darren village nestled within the Great Rift Valley. Being Young relayed the grim projection. If the skyline tree persisted in its explosion, Darren's village would be threatened in 2 days. Half a month later, S-City would be within the radius of destruction. After a full month, the entire area within 500 meters of the skyline tree would be engulfed in a blazing inferno. At this terrifying news, Lei drummed his fingers anxiously on the table. inquiring about the higher-ups' contingency plans. The directive from above was simple, though daunting. Do everything in their power to halt the explosion. If they failed, an evacuation of S City would be inevitable. Les stood abruptly, his mind racing with the weight of their situation. As he left, he asked Bing Young about any news of the goddess martial artist, only to be met with silence. He instructed Bing Young to inform all players of their final desperate plan to attack the skyline tree, with or without the goddess's assistance. Meanwhile, back in the fallen country, the goddess leaned in close to Wu's peculiar behavior, leaving him wondering if she had developed an appetite for demons. She asked him for food, revealing she had been starving for more than half a month. His transformation skill expired at that moment, causing his demonic form to gradually recede. The goddess, perplexed, questioned his metamorphosis into a human. His response came haltingly as he struggled to convey the paradoxical reality of his existence. Once a human cursed by the goddess, he had turned into a demon, which she believed him. She sniffed him again, stating her nose was exceptionally perceptive. According to her, he had not originally been a human. He gently nudged her away. Queering of hunger had driven her to lose her mind. Wu found it odd that she doubted his humanity. Delving into his pack, he presented a morsel of bread as a peace offering. The goddess, without hesitation, devoured the whole thing, leaving Wu astonished and slightly miffed at her insatiable appetite. As he observed her, he started to piece together her innocent naivete, and pondered on her origins as a goddess martial artist. Unanticipatedly, she admitted her own confusion about her celestial martial transformation. Just 6 months prior, when the game world had collided with Earth, she had been elevated to her current status, a revelation that sent shockwaves through Wu. He instinctively covered his mouth, but then paused, perplexed at how she deciphered his silent thoughts. With an air of casual dismissal, she warned him against overthinking. She had a unique passive ability, a mental radar that let her hear the thoughts of anyone within a 5-meter radius. Despite his earlier criticism, she didn't detect any malice from him, who instantly created distance. Careful to keep his secret identity as the game's designer under wraps, his survival depended on it. The goddess, gripping her shield, queried Wu about the route out of their current predicament. She'd spent over a month battling the undead elves, resorting to physical assaults, fire, burial, even magic, yet they remained undying. Wu, noticing her lack of tactical finesse, imagined himself utilizing her combat skills more effectively to escape the dungeon. He informed her that they were in. When she asked him about the boss's whereabouts, revealing that she'd never once encountered it during her time there, Wu pointed skyward, hinting that the boss resided at the pinnacle. Upon hearing this, she promptly readied herself to ascend. Who tried to interject to fully explain his plan, but she was already airborne, her spear poised for battle. Unfortunately, her ascent ended in a harsh fall back to Earth. Despite the fall's toll on her, she admitted her inability to conquer the boss. Wu then revealed that they were trapped in a difficulty-ranked dungeon, the toughest to conquer, and her status as a goddess martial artist wouldn't guarantee victory. Out of nowhere, a heavy thud shattered the ground. As Wu spun around, he was confronted by a gargantuan elf. The ominous note Rod, a level 90 monster with towering stats, and the wielder of the legendary artist's twin swords. This figure had once been a noble elf king, but was now twisted and corrupted into a guard for the realm of the dead. The appearance of such a formidable boss sent shivers down Wu's spine. With the goddess armed only with the elf saint's sword, their chances of victory looked bleak. Who found himself questioning the former elf king's transformation and the destructive alterations to his once harmonious game settings. The corrupted king then raised a gnarled hand, making Wu and the goddess brace for impact. Instead, it pointed an accusatory finger at Wu, branding him a thief. With a look of bewilderment, Wu gestured towards himself just as a digital prompt materialized in front of him. The interface inquired if he wished to transfer the key of the skyline tree to the elf king Notaro. Presenting the key, Wu queried if it was the item Rode sought. Rode took the key, interrogating Wu about the origins of a certain necklace, who informed him that it was a delivery entrusted to him by Rod's own son Offset, and he passed over a letter that further explained the situation. In a subsequent scene, amidst the ash and remnants of the front line, a tree inspiration gate materialized from thin air. Wu and the goddess emerged, and he was taken aback by the sight of the blossoming skyline tree. He pondered the implications of this occurrence, the tree blooming while he was in possession of its key. As Wu grappled with this mystery, The goddess turned her attention to Li collapsed on the battlefield. She tried to heal him, but the digital interface advised that his health was critically low, making any healing magic ineffective. Li, weak but relieved at her return, warned her of his impending demise and suggested she conserve her energy. He pleaded with her to aid Captain Thunder Armadillo and the rest of their companions at the skyline tree, who indicated to the goddess the urgency of their situation. He explained that without the key, the skyline tree would be indestructible regardless of their efforts. Grasping his hand, she pulled him to his feet and cautioned him to hold on tight. She was about to make a swift dash. Wu's initial confusion was soon replaced with comprehension, as he felt his soul nearly rip away from his body in response to the goddess's incredible speed. Meanwhile, within the royal court of the skyline tree, the players anxiously observed the shield, behind which the malevolent dark elf smirked. Lade, also known as Thunder Armadillo, was an ordinary mercenary before the game world and reality collided. Endowed with the power of the lightning god, he used this gift to rule over other factions. As the top dog of S-City's player association, Lei struck the shield with his lightning dragon fist. Only Tukazam Minor Fisher, the leader of Yun Tang clan Zhang Kai, launched his own attack against the seemingly impervious shield. Infuriated, he condemned the Dark Elves for their cowardice, chiding them for their reliance on a shield they themselves couldn't breach. Dark Elf King Noto Luca, a level 80s ranked character who wielded an iced lizard sword, was the fallen brother of Elf King Noto Erode. Luca, having chosen a path of malevolence, transformed into a dark elf, taunting the human players. He boasted that without the Skyline Tree's key, they could do nothing but watch as the Skyline Trees raise their world. John boldly proposed a fair duel to Luca, who dismissed the challenge, claiming a mere human was beneath his attention. Incensed, John threw verbal daggers at Luca, but was suddenly disrupted by an unexpected arrival. The goddess with a visibly winded Wu Hantou put an end to her sprint, as the players, relieved at her presence, questioned the identity of the frail figure she carried. One among them recognized him as Wu, the rabbit hunter. Much to the astonishment of everyone present, it appeared that Wu had crossed paths with the goddess who had taken it upon herself to save him. Li was full of admiration for Wu's resilience, pondering on when he had formed an alliance with the divine entity, who made a quiet Wu to himself, deciding against being carried by the goddess in the future. The ordeal had left him feeling like his nerves were afraid to their limits. Upon seeing the goddess, John extended a warm welcome, imploring her to wield her spear and shatter the enclosing barrier. Luca voiced his doubts regarding her escape from the land of the departed, skeptical that she had managed to defeat the Elf King. Noticing the key to the skyline trees hanging nonchalantly around Wu's neck, Luca's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Wu unsheathed his sword, causing whispers to ripple through the crowd. They began to suspect that his intentions were less than friendly. They couldn't fathom why Wu, the rabbit hunter, would dare to challenge a barrier that not even the powerful Thunderlay could destroy. Upon seeing the key, Luca hastily ordered the Dark Elves to stop Wu before they could react. However, their fellow warriors, livid and hungry for revenge, defended Wu and launched an attack on the elves. They were determined to vanquish the cowardly elves in honor of their fallen brethren. Moments later, Wu found himself standing in the royal court, located within the sacred Saint Relic Hall. He returned the necklace to its original place, causing the interface to materialize before him. Upon verifying his identity, it informed him that the skyline tree was operational and asked if he wished to deactivate it. Without missing a beat, Wu chose yes, despite a warning about the possibility of its complete destruction. Upon asking a second time, Wu remained resolute in his decision. The skyline tree's radiance painted a picture of awe on the city streets. The petals shimmered with such a brilliance that people couldn't help but wonder about their magical origin. A mother and her daughter, especially captivated by the spectacle, wished they could make a wreath from the enchanting petals for the girl's father, Li Zhongyun, the commander of the 2nd Offensive Team. Elsewhere, Ma was attentively looking after Mon. 2 weeks had passed since Wu's departure, and Meng gazed out the window with a concern etched on her face, wondering about his safety. The skyline tree was in full bloom, but as it shed its petals, stood naked, yet the spectacle remained undeniably majestic. In the meantime, Zhang Lei and the goddess kept their eyes trained on Luca. As the goddess tried to break through Luca's shield with her spear, Lei joined the assault with his lightning dragon fist. Luca scoffed at their attempts, stating that despite having been blessed with the thunder god's power, Les was still a mere mortal incapable of wielding the deity's full might. But to Luca's astonishment, Wei managed to break through his shield. As he felt his power draining, fear seized him. He couldn't fathom why Wu had control over the skyline tree. His protective shield began to dissolve slowly, and in his incredulity he shouted in denial. Seizing the moment, the goddess lunged at Luca with her spear. Even as he continued to deny his predicament, as the mighty tree's limb shattered, tumbling down in a cacophony of cracking wood, the players looked on in shocked silence. The earth beneath them began to split and crumble, causing a swift command for retreat to ripple through their ranks. News quickly spread that the monumental skyline tree had fallen, marking a resounding victory for humankind this round. In the somber aftermath, at the hallowed grounds of S-City's player graveyard, people gathered to pay homage to their lost heroes. The goddess and other leaders respectfully placed fragrant flowers on the graves of the fallen, while the bereaved families mourned to their brave kin. On this mournful day, in 2032, gallant heroes were lost to the disaster of the skyline tree. Their valorous fight for humanity would forever be etched in the annals of history. Elsewhere in a hospital room, a nurse gasped as she saw Meng awaken. Her gaze meeting the flickering lights outside, she quickly informed the director that the VIP patient in room had roused from her magic element syndrome. When Wu arrived, Meng, weak but alert, confessed she was hungry. Overwhelmed with joy, Wu enthusiastically offered to get her a hamburger and fried chicken. This prompted a stern rebuke from Ma, who reprimanded him for suggesting unhealthy food for the newly recovered Meng. The room fell into a sudden hush as the goddess was shocked to discover that Wu had a child. A wave of melancholy washed over her, but then a burst of ethereal blue light shone from her body, meeting a similar glow from Meng's forehead. To everyone's astonishment, a mysterious woman stepped forth from Ng's body. When I accused Wu of causing this, the woman retaliated, causing me to crumble to the ground. The enigmatic woman then commanded the goddess to enter the room. Upon her arrival, the woman revealed her identity to Wu. Leaving him in a state of bewilderment, she confessed to losing her divine powers during a previous encounter, but had not anticipated to find them within the goddess. Wu, piecing things together, asked if she was the goddess martial artist. She agreed to a certain extent, but clarified without her divine powers, she was no god. His next question about whether she was here to reclaim her powers was met with silence. Instead, she leaned in, whispering ominously that the game had started anew and survival meant victory, no matter the cost. Then, as abruptly as she had appeared, she planted a kiss on Wu's cheek and vanished, leaving Meng and the goddess in a state of stunned disbelief. Meng questioned the identity of the beautiful woman beside him, causing the goddess to blush and confusion and curiosity about her unexpected presence. Simultaneously, in the remote depths of the inland, an ominous creature clawed its way from the earth and took to the skies. As it unleashed a fearsome roar, a notification materialized, announcing the unlocking of the player's level. The game was indeed back in play. The game's elite player now boasted a towering level of 90. Nestled deep within a dungeon, a man found himself puzzled about the absence of the usual monstrous creatures and the chief monster, the boss. He informed his fellow adventurers about the eerily quiet dungeon, devoid of its usual terror. Yun Kong chimed in with information he'd gleaned from the player forum. The skyline tree had recently crumbled, and the dungeon had ceased to spawn the nightmare creatures. This sent Tension, who had recently splurged over $1 million on novel equipment after securing a player loan, into a frenzy of worrying about his looming debt. Now that monster battles were off the table, the bustling S-City's Chunga Street, a well-known hub for player commerce, had turned into a ghost town. Unemployed players were offloading their gear at dirt-cheap prices. The city was jolted by a massive explosion. Stores were raided by looters, but the once brave adventurers stood by spectating the unfolding chaos. Amidst this anarchy, a man asked his comrade about the number of recent thefts. His comrade grimly responded that if the association didn't wrangle control soon, S-City would turn into a sanctuary for lawbreakers. The discussion of this potential calamity was unfolding at a crucial meeting in the player association's towering building. Meanwhile, the goddess was grappling with a mix of embarrassment and curiosity. She had woken up last in Wu's infirmary, and was now pondering over her feelings for him and how to initiate a conversation. In another part of the room, the Green Sheep Guild's leader Zhang Yunhan expressed his dissatisfaction about the association's crumbling state, criticizing the presence of random attendees at the meeting as disrespectful. Zhang Kai quickly retorted, reminding Yuan Han that Wu had been their savior during the Skyline Tree's climactic battle. Despite this, Union's arrogance held its ground. This caught the attention of a woman who suggested that if John's words were true, the city had been rescued by an underdog. She introduced herself to Wu as Ducaire, the Chamber of Commerce's leader, and promised him diamond membership benefits for any future purchases. Wu thanked her graciously. This generous offer to Wu puzzled Zhang, who wondered aloud why they had received only gold memberships after years of hard work. Care responded cheekily, implying a potential interest in Wu. This sparked the goddess's anger, who quickly reminded Care about Wu's daughter. Unfazed, Care countered that she was well aware that Wu's daughter was adopted, and that Wu was technically single. A third-party tier couldn't resist teasing the goddess about her unusual interest in Wu's personal life. Yun Han, angered by the unfolding drama, labeled Wu as a freeloader, attracting stern glares from both the goddess and Kier. Wu, meanwhile, was regretting his decision to attend this meeting, an invitation to which had been delivered by late just 2 days prior. Less confidently shared with the gathered attendees that they would receive the association's top-notch privileges, along with a monthly stipend of $50,000. Wu, filled with relief, relished the thought of being free from the constant hunt for monsters. Meanwhile, in the icy expanse of Greenland, players engaged in heated debates over the execution of a jackalope. Life had grown grimmer following the collapse of the skyline tree. Weapons had lost their worth, and monsters had become scarce and elusive. Lei initiated the meeting, assuring everyone that they were ready to begin. Being Young set a dramatic scene by projecting a video teeming with formidable flying beasts and gargantuan creatures laying siege to players. Cure identified the chaotic battleground as the country's notorious Deep Abyss pit hole. Thing Yuan verified her suspicion, likening the pit to the fallen skyline tree for its influx of high-level monsters and pronouncing it the new primary battlefield. Adventurous players from all over were converging on the pit in an act of solidarity. Zhang, rested and concerned about the fate of his guild, implored the group to join the fray. Yun Han took a jab at the association's delayed reaction, revealing that an international player had already infiltrated our city a month prior. Didn't see that the revelation, sharing a tense glare with Yun Han caught in the crossfire, was Zhang, while Zhang detected Yun Han's provocative intent. A month prior, within the command center of H County's Abyss Pit Hole, Qiyang, the H Country Player Association's leader, somberly disclosed that they had lost control of 3 cities. He pointed out that Z Country's players currently held the highest levels and wondered why they hadn't sought their help. Jin Jian, Lion Minister and Disaster Officer of H Country, counter-argued, stating their high-level status and superior gear were the reasons to avoid involving the country. Their powerful players would likely monopolize the rewards from the Abyss Pit Hole. However, he conceded, if they were to share the skyline trees, loot and invitation could be extended. Raid Smith of M Country's Player Association confidently assured that they would manage the Deep Abyss with their formidable Tiger and White Bear guilds en route for support. Shiro Yusuk, the leader of their own association, confirmed the imminent arrival of their Dark Ninja and White Ghost guilds. The representatives from each nation expressed their gratitude, promising adequate compensation after the crisis. Despite the unity, Yun Zhen rebuked their approach, calling their treatment of the citizens a mockery. He warned them of the regret they would feel for not involving the country. He also reminded Unison of his position, emphasizing his power to revoke Yuan Zhen's title as clan leader. Yun Zhen, taken aback by the declaration, abruptly exited the meeting. Meanwhile, within the walls of S City's Player Association building, Being Yun unveiled that their side had reached out to H County more than thrice for negotiations. The opposing faction had triumphantly claimed the skies, plundering an impressive array of riches and items. Their price for access to their island was steep, half of the acquired spoils. The audacity of this demand sparked rage and Zhang, the pain of the losses it had incurred to secure these items raw and fresh. Zhang demanded answers from Lei, questioning their summons and seeking a solution to this impasse. Lei, the eye of calm within the storm, gently reassured Zhang, promising that their gathering had more to discuss, that a resolution was within reach. Lei then back into Being Young to unveil the truth. Being Young in turn played a series of disturbing videos. The haunting images showed the Deep Abyss Black Dragon Kobodo wreaking havoc, decimating entire cities. People were seen fleeing in terror, losing family and friends, abandoned amidst the ruins. The supposed heroes, the players, were retreating and panic. Monsters wreaked havoc on helpless citizens, while the players who were meant to be their saviors were paralyzed with fear. The enormity of the dragon's devastation shocked the leaders, drawing comparisons to a roaming doomsday device. John, learning that these horrors had occurred nearly a day ago, was visibly shaken. The second eruption from the deep abyss was of a magnitude beyond anything they had ever faced before. The fallout from this eruption was cataclysmic. 3 cities had been wiped off the map, 8 top-tier guilds annihilated, over 6,000 players demoralized to the point of surrender, and a staggering 350,000 lives lost. The room fell into a solemn silence at the revelation. Lei then broke the silence, highlighting that the remnants of the war were still very real, with each association bearing significant scars. He conveyed the unsettling reality that if the situation persisted, each city would crumble entirely within 3 months, causing severe national consequences. Lei then signaled a change in the discussion, introducing a special guest. The newcomer was none other than Chuang, the leader of the H-Country Player Association. Chuang, upon seeing him, immediately accused Jogan of seeking their aid only after suffering a crushing defeat. Lei swiftly stepped in, stating that Chuang had been pleading for their support for over a month. It was then announced that they had decided to lend their strength to each country, as the goddess martial group had reached an agreement and was mobilizing an expeditionary force. Chuang humbly implored them to help save his homeland. Leaving the room to fall into a contemplative silence once again, Lei turned to Chuang, probing him for a response given his earlier passionate outbursts. Chuang admitted that while he yearned to help after witnessing the video, he was reticent to risk the lives of his companions unnecessarily. With tears streaming down his face, Chuang pleaded desperately for the salvation of his homeland. Rising from his chair, Chuang threw pointed questions at Chuang, doubting his actions during the catastrophe. An air of indifference hung heavily around him, as he declared the meeting futile and his lack of concern for Chuang's country before storming off. Tier 2 took her leave, but not without issuing a veiled warning to the goddess. If she were to falter, who would be there to take over? Later, on a desolate highway, Julian probed a mysterious man about the situation at hand, inquiring about any possible leads. The man passed him a paper filled with revelations. They had clues, he said, even identifying the likely culprit behind Brother John's untimely death. The revelation was a shock to Chuang, recognizing the face in the picture. It led the man to ask whether Chuang knew this person, to which Chuang admitted having met him in a meeting. The man's investigation had unearthed more than just a name. It was a twisted tale. The man shared with Chuang that this person went by the name of Twang Wu. Nearly 3 months ago, Wu was but a greenhorn in this world. However, he had earned a peculiar title, the Rabbit Hunter. His fear of death had led him to hunt only horned rabbits for half a year, earning him the moniker. After a system notification, the Rabbit Hunter's behavior changed. He left his rabbit hunting days behind. And more curiously, he was now part of a specific team. What was even more astonishing was that Wu took only 2 days to complete the Drunkard's Chain mission and earn the historical rank mission. This brought John Chiat his attention onto him. By the time Tianyi reached Wu, however, he was already dead. Was who the murderer? Chuang pressed the man. Once could be an accident, twice a coincidence, but the third time, the man asserted, meant something more ominous. He expressed his suspicion that Wu was linked to the enigmatic raid god. The man laid out a potential path. If they could reach the raid god through Wu, their Greenland guild could ascend to be the strongest in S City, even in the world, within 6 months. But there was a hurdle. Wu's friendship with the martial goddess Chuang brushed it aside, believing they could bend Wu to their will, eliminating any potential trouble. When the man asked if Chuang intended to use the artifact, Chuang replied grimly that he wouldn't let the killer of his brother die too easily. He would ensure Wu endured a fate worse than death. Meanwhile, alone in his apartment, Wu sat hunched in front of his computer. He pondered over the game design. According to it, the Black Dragon should protect its egg, never leaving the deep abyss. However, the power he witnessed was far beyond his design. After the Skyline Trees amateur incident, he understood that the game had evolved beyond his original design. Upon sighting an unexpected figure astride the formidable Black Dragon, his curiosity was piqued. Activating his hunter's mark, he recognized a force that potentially dwarfed the dragon's might. His mind spun back to the words of the enigmatic lady, reminding him of the unyielding reality of the game. Survival was victory. His thoughts meander through the enigma that was this game of gods, and he found himself recollecting the Elf King. With a grateful heart, He acknowledged his release. He gazed at his paper, drowning in perplexing thoughts. Was this his own creation turned reality, or had reality always included this game? And if an original world truly existed, how would he discern it? And the ominous force controlling the Elf King, what could that possibly be? In his state of reflection, Meng offered him a comforting cup of brewed tea. His hand gently ruffled Mom's hair, praising her good nature when his gaze captured what she saw outside their window. And energy surge massive in scale caught his attention on the interface. With urgency, he swept Meng into his arms and leapt out of the safety of their apartment. Landing safely, but leaving Meng disoriented, Yun Han knew, who was no easy prey. He was convinced of Wu's survival. Wu challenged Tia Han, wondering if he truly understood his actions, if he feared the retaliation of the association. Yun Han retorted his fear of the association non-existent and his unyielding resolve to accomplish his goal. The mention of Yun Han's younger brother provoked Wu to reveal Lan sword, the owner of which Yun Han immediately recognized. Driven to rage, Yun Han sees Wu's demise, launching himself at Wu attack. Wu activated his hunter's mark, his vision marking the key points for a counterattack. His long sword met Yun Han's in a defense. In a chilling declaration, Yun Han professed his intention to become Wu's god, a thrill resonating within him. His thrill was short-lived as his sword snapped under Wu, shocking him. A bystander cautioned Yun Han about the mystery surrounding Wu. Unfazed, Yun Han challenged Wu with his arsenal, convinced of his opponent's imminent downfall. Displaying a new weapon, Yun Han resumed his attack. Wu mocked Yu enhanced feeble attempts in comparison to the martial goddess, provoking a heated response from Yun Han. A warning sounded to Yun Han about Wu's unrevealed secrets, cautioning him against killing Wu. Simultaneously, the martial goddess sensed an intense energy surge tracing its origins to Drung Wu's residence. In another scene, being Yuan relate to Lei the news of Yun Han's attack on John Wu. Enraged, Lei declared the Green Land Guild obsolete.